Ethan Cole had exactly 12 minutes before Lucas's daycare closed. 12 minutes to drop off his final delivery and escape the late fee he couldn't afford. He barely glanced at the mansion's marble entrance as he jogged up the steps, package tucked under one arm. Just another delivery. Just another faceless door in a neighborhood where people like him only existed to serve. Then he stepped into the foyer, and his entire world shattered. Hanging above the fireplace in a gilded frame was a portrait so familiar it knocked the breath from his lungs. The woman smiling down at him was his wife, his dead wife. Before we dive into this incredible story, I'd love to know how far it travels. Drop a comment with your city so I can see where you're watching from. Now, let's begin. The package slipped from Ethan's hands and hit the marble floor with a dull thud that echoed through the cavernous foyer. He didn't notice. His eyes were locked on the portrait, his vision tunneling until nothing existed except that face. Those eyes he'd watched close for the last time 3 years ago. That smile he'd memorized from 1,000 photographs. The slight tilt of her head she always did when she was genuinely happy. "Excuse me." The voice came from somewhere distant, sharp and authoritative. "You can't just walk in here." Ethan's legs moved on autopilot, carrying him closer to the fireplace. The portrait was massive, easily 6 feet tall, professionally painted in oils that captured every detail with heartbreaking accuracy. The woman wore an elegant evening gown he'd never seen, her dark hair swept up in a style she'd never worn around him, but it was her. Every freckle, every curve of her jawline, the exact shade of her hazel eyes. "Sir, I'm speaking to you." Footsteps clicked rapidly across the marble. "Security!" "That's my wife." Ethan's voice came out strangled, barely above a whisper. That's Sarah." A hand gripped his shoulder, trying to turn him away. Ethan shrugged it off without looking, stepping even closer to the portrait. A small brass plate was mounted on the frame's lower edge. He read the engraving 3 times before the words made sense. "Clara Hart, beloved sister, forever." "Missed your wife?" The sharp voice was right beside him now, edged with something between anger and disbelief. "That's not possible. That's my sister." Ethan finally tore his gaze from the portrait to look at the woman beside him. She was tall, probably in her early 40s, dressed in an impeccably tailored black suit that screamed wealth and power. Her dark hair was pulled into a severe bun, her makeup flawless, her posture rigid with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. But her eyes, they were the same hazel as the woman in the portrait, the same hazel as Sarah's. "I buried her 3 years ago." Ethan's hands were shaking. He pressed them against his thighs, trying to steady himself. "Her name was Sarah Cole. She was my wife. We were married for 4 years before the accident." The woman's face had gone pale beneath her foundation. "That's impossible. Clara disappeared 13 years ago. She was 22. The family hired investigators, but she vanished completely." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word. "No trace, no contact, nothing." "I don't know anything about that." Ethan gestured helplessly at the portrait. "I only know that's my wife's face. Her exact face." "And you're saying her name was Clara Hart?" Her name is Clara Hart." The woman's composure was fracturing, her perfect posture beginning to slouch. "She's not dead. She can't be. We've been searching. I have her death certificate." The words felt like broken glass in Ethan's throat. "I have photographs. I have a 6-year-old son who looks exactly like her. And I have her grave." The woman swayed slightly, one hand reaching out to grip the mantel for support. "A son?" "Lucas." Ethan pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, swiping to his lock screen photo. He just turned 6 last month. The photo showed Lucas grinning at the camera, missing his 2 front teeth, his hazel eyes bright with mischief. The woman stared at it for a long moment, her breath coming in shallow gasps. "He has her eyes," she whispered, "and her smile. Oh God, he has Clara's smile." 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, large men in dark suits with earpieces. The woman held up one hand without looking at them. "It's fine. Leave us." Her voice was steady despite the tears beginning to track down her cheeks. Close the doors. I don't want to be disturbed." The guards exchanged glances but obeyed, pulling the massive wooden doors shut behind them. The click of the latch echoed like a gunshot. "My name is Vivian Hart." The woman's professional mask was completely gone now, replaced by raw grief and desperate hope. "Clara was my younger sister. Our father is Jonathan Hart. You might have heard of him." Ethan had. Hart Industries was one of the largest tech conglomerates in the country, worth billions. The kind of company that made headlines when their stock ticked up or down a single point. "Sarah never mentioned any family," Ethan said slowly. "She told me she was alone, that she grew up in foster care, that she had no one. She lied." Vivian's voice was flat, matter of fact. "Clara grew up in a mansion twice this size. Private schools, trust funds, everything money could buy." She walked to a side table and poured herself 2 fingers of whiskey from a crystal decanter, not bothering to offer Ethan any. "She also grew up in a cage." "What do you mean?" Vivian took a long drink before answering. "Our father is brilliant and ruthless and utterly convinced he knows what's best for everyone. Clara was groomed from birth to marry well, to strengthen the family's business connections, to be a perfect Hart daughter." She laughed, a bitter sound. "I played along. I went to Harvard Business School, joined the company, became Daddy's perfect successor. But Clara, she rebelled," Ethan finished quietly. "She fought him on everything. Her clothes, her friends, her major in college. She wanted to study art history. Father wanted her in business or law." Vivian refilled her glass. "The final straw was when she turned down a marriage arrangement with the son of one of Father's business partners. She was 22. Father threatened to cut her off, to remove her from the will. Clara said fine. She walked out during a family dinner and never came back." Ethan's mind was reeling, trying to reconcile the Sarah he'd known with this Clara person. "The Sarah I met was working as a waitress. She lived in a tiny apartment with 3 roommates. She told me she'd been on her own since 18. "When did you meet her?" 8 years ago. I was working nights as a janitor at the university while taking classes during the day. She waitressed at this diner near campus." A ghost of a smile crossed Ethan's face despite everything. "I came in every Thursday after my shift, always ordered the same thing, coffee and pie. She finally asked me if I was ever going to order real food." Vivian was watching him with an intensity that made Ethan uncomfortable. "What was she like? With you, I mean." "Happy." The word came without thought. "She laughed all the time. She was terrible at cooking but kept trying anyway. She loved old movies and used bookstores and this terrible cheap wine she insisted was sophisticated." Ethan's throat tightened. "She made me feel like I was worth something. Like being a delivery driver supporting a kid wasn't something to be ashamed of." "You have a son together," Vivian said softly. "Lucas." "Yeah." Ethan pulled up more photos, unable to help himself. "He's smart, really smart. His teacher says he's reading 2 grades above his level, and he's kind, you know. The other day I picked him up from daycare, and he'd given his snack to another kid who forgot theirs." Vivian took the phone carefully, as if it might shatter. She scrolled through the photos slowly. Lucas at the park, Lucas covered in paint at an art class, Lucas asleep on the couch with a book open on his chest. "He looks so much like her," she breathed. "The same concentration face when he's reading. Claire used to look exactly like that when she was absorbed in something. Sarah did that too." Ethan remembered countless evenings watching her curl up with a book, completely lost to the world. "I used to joke that I could set off fireworks and she wouldn't notice." Claire was the same way. Vivian's hand trembled slightly as she handed back the phone. "This doesn't make sense. Why would she tell you she had no family? Why disappear so completely?" "I don't know." Ethan ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion and confusion weighing on him like physical things. "But I need to pick up Lucas in—" He checked his watch and swore. "I'm already late. The daycare charges $1 a minute after 6. "I'll pay for it." The words came out rushed. "Please, I need to understand this. Can you come back? Tomorrow? Bring Lucas if you want. I promise, I just want to talk." Ethan studied her face, seeing the desperate plea beneath the commanding exterior. This was a woman who was used to getting what she wanted through authority and money, now reduced to begging a delivery driver for answers about her lost sister. "I need proof," he said finally, "that you're really her sister, that this isn't some kind of mistake or—" He trailed off, not sure what other explanation there could be. "I can show you everything." Vivian was already moving toward a door at the back of the room. "Photo albums, family records, Clara's old room. We kept it exactly the way she left it. But if you need something more concrete, DNA test." The words came out harder than Ethan intended. "Between you and Lucas, if you're really his aunt, it'll show up." Vivian stopped, her back to him. For a long moment she didn't move. Then her shoulders straightened. "Yes? Of course, that's very reasonable." "I'm not trying to be an asshole." Ethan picked up his dropped package, its contents probably broken. "But my son's welfare is the only thing that matters. If there's even a chance this is some kind of scam, it's not." Vivian turned, and the naked pain on her face made Ethan take a step back. "I've spent 13 years searching for my sister. 13 years of private investigators and false leads and sleepless nights. Do you have any idea what it's like to lose someone without knowing if they're alive or dead? To wonder every single day if this is the day you'll find them?" "Yeah," Ethan said quietly. "I do. Because I found her, and then I lost her, and I've spent the last 3 years learning how to breathe through it for my son's sake." They stared at each other, two people united by loving the same woman, separated by everything else. "Tomorrow," Vivian said finally. "I'll arrange for a private testing facility, completely confidential. You'll have the results in 48 hours. "Okay." Ethan headed for the door, then paused. "If this is real, if you really are Lucas's aunt, what do you want?" "I don't know." Vivian's voice was barely audible. I just want to know what happened to my sister, why she left, why she never came back." She looked up at the portrait, her expression crumbling. "And I want to know my nephew, if you'll let me." Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. The possibility of this woman being family, of Lucas having a connection to his mother beyond photographs and stories, was too enormous to process. He left without another word, his mind spinning as he jogged back to his delivery van. The drive to Lucas's daycare passed in a blur. Ethan paid the $47 late fee without complaint, earning a disapproving look from the daycare director that he barely registered. Lucas came running out with his Spider-Man backpack, his face lighting up the way it always did when he saw his dad. "Daddy, guess what we did today?" "What'd you do, buddy?" Ethan helped him into his booster seat, forcing his hands to steady as he buckled the straps. "We made family trees. Miss Sarah said we should draw everyone who loves us. I drew you and Grandma and Grandpa and Mommy in heaven and Mr. Jenkins next door who gives me cookies." Lucas held up his artwork proudly, a stick figure tree with various people drawn in the branches. "Miss Sarah said family isn't just blood, it's people who care about you." Ethan stared at the drawing, his throat tight. "That's beautiful, Lucas, really beautiful. Can we get McDonald's for dinner, please?" Yeah, we can do that." They drove through the golden arches, Lucas chattering about his day while Ethan's mind kept returning to that portrait, to Vivian's haunted eyes, to the impossible possibility that Sarah had been someone else entirely. That night, after Lucas was in bed, Ethan pulled out the box he kept in the back of his closet. Sarah's box. He'd been through it 100 times, but he looked through everything again with new eyes. Her driver's license said Sarah Marie Cole, showed an address in Portland before she'd met him. But Ethan had never thought to verify it, never had any reason to doubt her. Why would he? Their marriage certificate, her death certificate from the accident, a drunk driver running a red light. She'd died instantly, the police said. At least she hadn't suffered. The hospital bills that had bankrupted him, even with insurance. Lucas's birth certificate, listing Sarah Marie Cole as his mother. But there were no photos of her before they'd met. No yearbooks, no childhood pictures, no mementos from before Portland. At the time, Ethan had accepted her explanation that she'd left everything behind when she aged out of foster care, wanted a fresh start. Now he wondered what else he'd accepted without question. He found her journal in the bottom of the box, the leather-bound book she'd kept tucked in her nightstand. Ethan had read it once, right after she died, torturing himself with her final entries. He'd put it away and never looked at it again, the pain too fresh. Now he opened it to a random page, hands shaking. January 15th. Ethan asked about my family again today. I hate lying to him. Lying too. I hate that every story about my childhood is fabricated, that every answer is carefully constructed to hide the truth. But how do I tell him that I'm not the person he thinks I am? That the woman he loves is a ghost, a construct, someone I created to escape? He wouldn't understand. He'd think I was using him, or crazy, or worse. And maybe I am using him, using this simple, beautiful life as a shield against the world I left behind. But God, I love him. I love him so much it terrifies me. What started as escape has become everything. I think about telling him the truth every day. Every time he looks at me with those honest eyes, so certain that what we have is real and simple and good. But the truth would ruin everything. The hearts don't let go. Father would find us, would tear this life apart, would probably try to take Ethan from me through sheer legal force. So I lie. And I hope that one day it won't feel like betrayal. Ethan's hands were shaking so badly he had to set the journal down. He flipped through more pages, finding similar entries scattered throughout. References to the life I left, the truth he doesn't know, the family that wants me back. Near the end, dated 2 weeks before her death, one final entry. If something happens to me, and I know that's morbid to think about, but I can't shake this feeling lately. I need Ethan to know that everything between us was real. The love was real. Lucas is the most real thing I've ever done. I've left instructions with the lawyer in Seattle. If I die, he's supposed to give Ethan a letter explaining everything. My real name, where I came from, why I left. I should have told him myself 1,000 times, but I was a coward. I wanted this perfect life too badly to risk it with the truth. I hope he can forgive me. I hope Lucas never has to know his mother was a liar. And I hope that someday, when enough time has passed, Ethan finds someone new. Someone honest. Someone who deserves him and Lucas. He's so good. They both are. And I've spent 7 years lying to the best people I've ever known. Ethan read the entry 3 times, each word hitting like a physical blow. A lawyer in Seattle. Instructions. A letter explaining everything. But Ethan had never received any letter. In the chaos after the accident, the hospital, the funeral, caring for a devastated 3-year-old, no lawyer had ever contacted him. He grabbed his laptop and started searching. Seattle lawyers, Sarah Cole. Anything that might lead to this mysterious letter. After 2 hours, he had nothing but eye strain and a growing headache. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Hello? Mr. Cole? This is Vivian Hart. I apologize for calling so late, but I wanted to let you know I've arranged the DNA test for tomorrow at 11 a.m. The facility is called Gene Tech Labs on Riverside Drive. Everything's been handled. You just need to bring Lucas. They'll do a simple cheek swab. That was fast. I'm motivated. A pause. I also wanted to apologize for earlier. I know this is overwhelming. Whatever happens, whatever the results say, I won't intrude on your life if you don't want me to. Ethan thought about the journal entry, about Sarah's desperate need to hide from her family. Did she have a reason to be afraid of you, of your family? Silence stretched on the line. Finally, Vivian spoke, her voice careful. Clara had reasons to run. Our father can be, controlling, demanding. He saw his children as extensions of the Hart legacy rather than people. Another pause. But I never wanted to hurt her. I loved my sister. I still do. I just wanted her to be happy, even if that meant defying father. But you stayed. Ethan wasn't sure why he was pushing, but something in him needed to understand. You played along with your father's plans while she ran away. Yes. The word was heavy with old guilt. I was the dutiful daughter, the one who colored inside the lines, and I've spent 13 years wondering if that choice cost me my sister. Her voice broke slightly. If I'd been braver, stood up to father more, maybe Clara would have felt like she could stay. Maybe she wouldn't have had to erase herself to be free. Ethan closed his eyes, thinking of Sarah, Clara, creating an entire false identity just to escape her family's control. I found her journal. She wrote about leaving instructions with a lawyer, but I never received anything. What kind of instructions? A letter explaining everything. Her real identity, why she left. She wanted me to know the truth if anything happened to her. Ethan's grip tightened on the phone. Do you know anything about a lawyer in Seattle? No, but I can find out. What was the firm's name? She didn't write it down, just said the lawyer in Seattle. I'll have my people search. If Clara set something up, there'll be a record somewhere. Vivian's voice shifted, becoming harder, more focused. This letter, did she say what else it contained? No, just that it would explain everything. I need to see that journal. No. The word came out sharp. It's private. It's all I have left of her. Mr. Cole, Ethan, please, if there are clues about why Clara left, about what she was afraid of, I need to know. Not for me, but for Lucas. If there are threats, there are no threats. She died in a car accident 3 years ago. Are you certain? Vivian's question hung in the air like poison. Are you absolutely certain it was just an accident? Ethan's blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying that the Hart family has enemies, business rivals, people who would love to leverage our vulnerabilities. If someone knew Clara had a son, if they thought they could use Lucas, stop. Ethan was on his feet, pacing his small living room. You're talking about conspiracy theories. Sarah died because some drunk asshole ran a red light. The police investigated. There was no foul play. Probably you're right. Vivian didn't sound convinced. But I'd like to verify that. With your permission, I'd like to have my security team review the accident report, just to be thorough. Your security team. I employ the best in the industry. If there's anything suspicious, they'll find it. And if there's nothing, then you'll have peace of mind. Ethan wanted to say no, to tell this woman to stay out of his life, to protect Lucas from whatever complicated mess Sarah had been running from. But doubt had taken root, small and poisonous. Fine, but I want copies of whatever they find. And if you try to use any of this to take Lucas, I would never. Vivian's voice was fierce. He's my sister's son. I want to protect him, not hurt him. Tomorrow at 11, Ethan said, and hung up. He spent the rest of the night staring at Sarah's journal, reading and rereading her entries, trying to find the woman he'd married in these confessions of lies and fear. The Sarah he'd known had been open, warm, present. This Clara person seemed haunted, always looking over her shoulder. Which version had been real? The next morning, Ethan called in sick to work and took Lucas to the testing facility. GeneTech Labs was in a nondescript office building, the kind of place that could house anything from accountants to dentists. Vivian was already there, dressed in another perfect suit, her hair immaculate despite the early hour. Lucas, Ethan said, kneeling to his son's level. This is Miss Vivian. She might be your aunt, your mommy's sister. We're doing a test to find out for sure. Lucas studied Vivian with the solemn curiosity of a 6-year-old. You look like Mommy, in the pictures. Vivian's composure cracked. She blinked rapidly, fighting tears. Do I? Yeah, you have the same eyes. Daddy says I have Mommy's eyes too. You do. Vivian knelt down as well, making herself Lucas's height. They're beautiful. The test took 15 minutes. A cheerful technician swabbed Lucas's cheek while explaining she was collecting cells that tell us about your family tree, then did the same for Vivian. The whole thing was painless and quick, and Lucas got a lollipop afterward. Results in 48 hours, the technician promised. We'll email them to both addresses you provided. Outside, Vivian hesitated. Would it be all right if I bought Lucas breakfast? There's a good diner a few blocks from here. Ethan's instinct was to refuse, to get Lucas away from this woman and the complicated history she represented. But Lucas was looking up at Vivian with curiosity and something that might have been hope, and Ethan couldn't bring himself to say no. Okay, just breakfast. The diner was exactly the kind of place Sarah would have loved. Vinyl booths, laminated menus, a pie case by the register. Lucas ordered chocolate chip pancakes and orange juice. Vivian ordered coffee and nothing else, too nervous to eat. So you're really my maybe aunt? Lucas asked around a mouthful of pancake. Lucas, don't talk with your mouth full, Ethan said automatically. Lucas swallowed. Sorry, but are you? I might be. Vivian's hands wrapped around her coffee cup like she needed the warmth. I had a sister named Clara who looked exactly like your mommy. She went away a long time ago, and I've been trying to find her. Mommy's in heaven, Lucas said matter-of-factly. She died when I was 3. I don't remember her much, but Daddy shows me pictures and tells me stories. What kind of stories? Lucas launched into his favorite tale, about the time Sarah had tried to make spaghetti and somehow set off the smoke alarm, and they'd had to evacuate the apartment building, and she'd been so embarrassed she'd bought pizza for all the neighbors to apologize. Vivian listened with rapt attention, laughing in all the right places. Her eyes bright with tears, she kept blinking back. She sounds wonderful, Vivian said when Lucas finished. Terrible at cooking, but wonderful. She was. Ethan heard his own voice go rough. She really was. Vivian pulled out her phone, hesitating before turning it toward Lucas. Can I show you something? The screen displayed a photo of 2 young girls, maybe 8 and 6, dressed in matching white dresses. They were standing in front of a massive Christmas tree, both grinning at the camera. The younger girl had her arm around the older one's waist. That's me and Clara, Vivian said softly. This was taken about 30 years ago. Lucas studied the photo carefully. The little one looks like Mommy. She was Mommy, Ethan said, his chest tight. Because there was no denying it now. Same smile, same eyes, same way of tilting her head just slightly. At least, she might have been. I have more pictures, Vivian said, at my house. Albums full of them. If you want to see... Yes! Lucas bounced in his seat. Can we go see, Daddy, please? Ethan wanted to say no. Wanted to take Lucas home, back to their small, safe life where the past stayed buried and complications didn't exist. But he looked at his son's eager face and knew he couldn't deny him this. The chance to see his mother as a child, to understand where half of him came from. Okay, he said quietly. But just for a little while. Vivian's mansion looked even more imposing in daylight. Lucas's eyes went wide as they drove through the gates and up the long driveway. You live here? By yourself? I do now. I do. Vivian led them inside, through the marble foyer where Ethan had first seen the portrait. In the daylight, it was even more striking, more real. I used to live with my parents, but they both passed away. Father had a heart attack 5 years ago. Mother died 2 years later. I'm sorry, Ethan said automatically. Don't be. We weren't close. Vivian's voice was matter-of-fact. Father died still angry that Clara had defied him. Mother died still hoping she'd come home. She paused, her hand on a doorframe. I'm the only one left now. Or I was, until yesterday. She led them to a sitting room lined with bookshelves. Several leather-bound albums sat on a coffee table, clearly prepared in advance. Vivian sat down and opened the first one, Lucas immediately climbing up beside her. This is Clara, when she was a baby, Vivian said, pointing to a photo of a wrinkled infant in an elaborate christening gown. She was born in this house, in the master bedroom upstairs. Father insisted, said hearts were born at home, not in hospitals. Lucas giggled. She looks funny. All babies look funny. Vivian turned the page, revealing more photos. Clara learning to walk, Clara covered in birthday cake, Clara in a frilly dress looking mutinous. She hated wearing fancy clothes. Mother was always trying to put her in ruffles and bows, and Clara was always finding ways to get them dirty. Mommy didn't like fancy clothes either, Lucas said. She wore jeans and t-shirts mostly. Did she? Vivian's smile was sad. That sounds like Clara. They went through 3 albums, Vivian narrating each photo while Lucas asked questions and Ethan watched, his heart breaking and reforming with every page. This was Sarah's childhood, the life she'd never spoken about, rendered in glossy photographs and Vivian's careful memories. There were pictures of family vacations to exotic locations, of Christmas mornings in front of trees that probably cost more than Ethan made in a year, of birthday parties with hired entertainers and custom cakes. But there were also photos that told another story. Clara sitting alone in a corner at a party, looking miserable. Clara with tear-stained cheeks after some childhood upset. Clara glaring at the camera, rebellious even at 8. She was never happy, Vivian said quietly when they reached the teenage years. I thought it was just adolescence at first. Every teenager rebels, right? But it wasn't that. Clara felt trapped, like she was being molded into someone she wasn't. One photo showed Clara at what must have been her high school graduation, standing stiffly between her parents in her cap and gown. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I remember this day," Vivian said. "Father gave a speech about how proud he was, how Clara would go to Harvard like I had, how she'd join the family business and make the Hart name even greater." She touched the photo gently. "Clara left the party early. I found her crying in her room later. She said she felt like she was drowning." "What did you do?" Ethan asked. "I told her it would get better, that Father would ease up once she was in college, that she'd have more freedom." Vivian's voice was thick with regret. "I was wrong. He got worse, started introducing her to suitable young men from other wealthy families, planned her entire future without asking what she wanted." She turned to the last page in the album, a family photo, formal and posed. Clara was 22, beautiful and polished and utterly miserable. This was taken 2 weeks before she disappeared. Father's 60th birthday party, 500 guests, champagne, a 12-piece orchestra. Clara wore the dress Father picked out, danced with the men he chose, smiled for all the right photographs. And then she went upstairs, packed a single bag, and walked out the front door. "And you never saw her again?" Lucas's voice was small. "Never. We searched everywhere, hired investigators, put up missing person reports, checked hospitals and morgues." Vivian closed the album carefully. "Nothing. It was like she'd ceased to exist." But she didn't cease to exist. Ethan's throat was tight. She was in Portland, working as a waitress, building a life. "A life where she could be happy," Vivian said. "A life where she could choose who to love and how to live and what to dream about." She looked at Lucas. "A life where she could have you." Lucas was quiet for a moment, processing. Then, "I'm glad she chose that life. Because otherwise I wouldn't be here, and Daddy wouldn't have met Mommy, and we wouldn't have been a family even for a little while." Ethan pulled his son close, pressing his face into Lucas's hair to hide the tears he couldn't stop. Vivian stood abruptly and walked to the window, her shoulders shaking. They stayed like that for a long moment, three people bound by loss and love for the same woman, until Lucas broke the silence with a very practical question. "Can we see Mommy's room?" Vivian showed them upstairs to a bedroom that had been preserved like a shrine. The walls were painted a soft lavender, covered in posters of bands from the early 2000s and prints of famous paintings. A bookshelf overflowed with novels and art books. The desk still had pens scattered across it, a dried-out coffee mug, a stack of college brochures for art history programs. "We kept it exactly as she left it," Vivian said, "just in case she came back." Lucas explored with the fearless curiosity of a child, picking up books, examining the posters, opening the closet to find clothes from 13 years ago. Ethan stood frozen in the doorway, overwhelmed by this glimpse into Sarah's, Clara's, past. "There's something else," Vivian said quietly. "Something I found while going through her things again last night." She went to the desk and pulled out a small leather journal from a locked drawer. Clara kept a diary. "I never read it before. It felt like an invasion of privacy. But after meeting you, I thought..." She held it out to Ethan. "I thought you should see it." Ethan took the journal with shaking hands. The leather was soft with age, the pages yellowed. He opened to a random entry, dated about a year before Clara disappeared. "Father informed me today that I'll be attending the Westbrook Foundation Gala as Richard Pemberton's date. Not asked. Informed. As if I'm a chess piece to be moved around his board, a pretty asset to be deployed for business advantages. I'm so tired of being a heart. Tired of the weight of the name, the expectations, the absolute certainty that my life is not my own. Vivian tries to understand, but she doesn't. She thrives in this world. She likes the power, the influence, the way doors open when she walks into a room. I just want to be nobody. A regular person with a regular life, making regular choices about regular things. Is that so impossible?" Ethan flipped through more entries, each one painting a picture of a woman desperately trying to escape. Then, near the end, the tone shifted. "I've made my decision. I'm leaving." Not in anger this time, not as a tantrum or a statement, I'm leaving for good. I've been planning for months. I have money saved, cash that father can't trace. I have a new identity prepared, documents that will let me start over. I'm going somewhere he'll never think to look, somewhere far from the hard empire. I'm scared, terrified actually, but I'd rather be terrified and free than safe and suffocating. I wish I could tell Vivian. She'd be hurt that I didn't say goodbye, that I'm leaving her alone to deal with father. But if I tell her, she'll try to talk me out of it. Or worse, father will use her to find me. This has to be a clean break. If I'm lucky, I'll build a real life. Meet real people who see me, not the heart name. Maybe even fall in love. Real love. Not the arranged kind father's been pushing. If I'm unlucky, I'll fail and have to come crawling back. But at least I'll have tried. This is the last entry I'll make in this journal. Clara Hart ends here. Tomorrow, I become someone new. The rest of the pages were blank. She was so brave, Vivian said quietly. Walking away from everything like that. She was running, Ethan corrected, his voice rough. Running from a life she couldn't bear. And she found you. Vivian's eyes were wet. She found you and Lucas and happiness and everything she'd been searching for. For 7 years, Ethan closed the journal carefully, and then some drunk driver took it all away. Lucas had found a small music box on Clara's dresser and was watching a tiny ballerina twirl to a delicate melody. The sound was haunting, childish, and sad at the same time. I'm starting to understand why she never told me, Ethan said, about her real family, her real past. She was protecting this life she'd built. If your father had found out, he would have destroyed everything, Vivian finished. Legally, financially, emotionally. Father didn't accept defeat. If he'd known Clara had married and had a child, he would have seen it as theft. His daughter, his legacy, stolen by someone unworthy. Someone like me, Ethan said flatly. A delivery driver with no college degree and no prospects. I didn't mean, yeah, you did. And you're right. Ethan looked around the expensive room, thought about his one-bedroom apartment where Lucas slept on a pull-out couch. I was exactly the kind of person your father would have despised. Sarah, Clara, she must have known that. She was protecting me, too. Lucas closed the music box and came to stand beside his father. Daddy, why does everyone seem so sad here? Ethan picked up his son, even though Lucas was really getting too big for it. Because we're all missing the same person, buddy. Your mom. But she's not really missing anymore, right? Lucas looked between Ethan and Vivian with that peculiar clarity children sometimes have. Because now we know where she was and what happened. We found her. Yeah, Ethan said softly. I guess we did. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A text from an unknown number. Ethan pulled it out one-handed, Lucas still in his arms. The message was simple. GeneTech Labs. Your results are ready early. Please contact us to retrieve them. Ethan showed the text to Vivian. Her face went pale. Already? They said 48 hours. Apparently not. Ethan's heart was pounding. Do you want to go get them together? Vivian looked at him for a long moment, and Ethan saw real fear in her eyes. Fear that the results would be negative, that this connection to her lost sister would evaporate, but also fear that they'd be positive, that everything was about to change in ways neither of them could control. Yes, she said finally. Together. They drove separately to GeneTech Labs, Lucas chattering in the backseat of Ethan's van about the big house and all the pictures and how nice maybe Aunt Vivian seemed. Ethan's hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly, his mind spinning through possibilities. The technician who greeted them was the same cheerful woman from before, but her expression was more serious now. She led them to a private office and handed each of them a sealed envelope. The results are conclusive, she said. I'll leave you to review them in private. After she left, Ethan and Vivian sat across from each other at a small conference table, the envelopes between them like unexploded bombs. You open it, Vivian whispered. I can't. Ethan's hands shook as he tore open the envelope, pulled out the single sheet of paper, and read the words that would change everything. Probability of relationship, 99.9%. Vivian Hart. where Sean and Lucas Cole share sufficient genetic markers to confirm an avuncular relationship. Vivian Hart is the biological aunt of Lucas Cole with greater than 99% certainty. The paper slipped from Ethan's fingers. She was telling the truth, he heard himself say from very far away. Sarah was really Clara, your sister. Lucas's... He couldn't finish the sentence. Vivian grabbed the paper with shaking hands, reading and rereading the results. A sound escaped her that was half laugh, half sob. "I have a nephew," she said, her voice breaking. "Clara had a son, and I have a nephew." She looked up at Ethan, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time since this began, she looked genuinely, completely happy, and terrified, and heartbroken. All at once. Lucas, who had been playing a game on Ethan's phone, looked up at the crying adults with concern. Did something bad happen? Nobody. Ethan pulled Lucas onto his lap, holding him tightly. Something complicated happened, but not bad. Miss Vivian is definitely my aunt? Yeah. Ethan's voice was hoarse. She's definitely your aunt. Cool. Lucas grinned at Vivian. Does this mean I can come see the big house again? And look at more pictures of Mommy when she was little? Vivian pressed both hands to her mouth, nodding frantically, unable to speak through her tears. And just like that, their lives changed. The truth was out, confirmed by science, undeniable and permanent. Sarah Cole had been Clara Hart. Lucas Cole was the nephew of a billionaire. And Ethan's small, carefully protected life had just become infinitely more complicated. The drive back to Ethan's apartment felt surreal, like moving through water. Lucas had fallen asleep in his booster seat, the DNA results clutched in Ethan's jacket pocket like a ticking bomb. His phone had been buzzing non-stop. 3 calls from Vivian, 2 text messages he hadn't opened, and a voicemail he wasn't ready to listen to. He carried Lucas inside, grateful his son was light enough to manage the 3 flights of stairs without waking him. The apartment felt smaller than usual, shabbier. The peeling paint and worn carpet suddenly glaring in contrast to Vivian's marble mansion. Ethan laid Lucas on the pull-out couch, pulled the blanket up to his chin, and stood there watching his son sleep, trying to process what had just happened. His wife had been someone else. Someone rich, someone powerful, someone who'd literally erased herself to escape. And now her sister, Lucas's aunt, was back in their lives with all the money and influence Sarah had run from. Ethan's phone buzzed again. This time he answered. "I'm sorry for calling so much." Vivian's voice was steadier than it had been at the lab, but still fragile around the edges. I need to know what happens next, please." "I don't know what happens next." Ethan moved to the kitchen, putting distance between himself and Lucas's sleeping form. "This is all happening too fast. I understand. I do. But Ethan, Lucas is my nephew, my sister's son, the only family I have left." A pause, then quieter. "Can I see him again? Soon?" Every instinct in Ethan screamed to say no, to protect Lucas from the complications this woman represented. But he heard the desperation in her voice, recognized it because he'd felt it himself every time he looked at Lucas and saw Sarah's eyes staring back. "Saturday," he said finally. "You can come over Saturday afternoon, not to the mansion, here. I want Lucas on home turf." "Of course, whatever you're comfortable with." Relief flooded through the phone line. "Thank you. Ethan, thank you. Don't thank me yet. We need to set some ground rules." "Anything. Lucas comes first, always. If this gets too complicated or confusing for him, we stop. I don't care about DNA or family connections. His well-being is the only thing that matters." "Agreed, completely. And you don't tell him about the money, about who his mother really was, about the Hart family empire. None of it. Not yet. He's 6. He doesn't need to know his mother was a billionaire heiress who faked her own identity." Vivian was quiet for a moment. "For how long?" "I don't know, until I figure out how to explain it without making his mother sound like a liar." "She wasn't a liar." Vivian's voice turned fierce. "She was a survivor. She did what she had to do to be free. She lied to me for 7 years." The words came out harsher than Ethan intended. "About everything. Her name, her past, her family, Every story about her childhood was fabricated. Every time I asked about her parents, about growing up, she looked me in the eye and lied. To protect you, or to protect herself. Ethan rubbed his eyes, exhaustion weighing on him. I loved her. God, I loved her so much. But I'm starting to realize I didn't actually know her at all. You knew the parts that mattered. Vivian's voice softened. The Clara I knew was controlled, miserable, trapped. The Sarah you described sounds happy, free. That was real, Ethan. The life she built with you was the most honest thing she ever did. Ethan wanted to believe that, needed to believe it, but doubt had taken root, and every memory of Sarah now came with a shadow of uncertainty. Saturday, he repeated. 2:00. And Vivian? Come alone. No assistance, no security, no reminders of who you are. I'll be there. After she hung up, Ethan pulled out Sarah's journal again, the one from his closet, and read through it with new understanding. Every vague reference to the life before, every careful omission, every deflection, it all made sense now. She'd been terrified of being found, of her carefully constructed world collapsing. Near the middle of the journal, he found an entry he'd skimmed over before, but now read with painful attention. Lucas asked about grandparents today. He's getting old enough to notice that other kids have them, and he doesn't. I told him the story I always tell, that my parents died when I was young, that I don't have any family left. The lie comes so easily now, I barely have to think about it. But God, it hurt. Because somewhere in Connecticut, my mother is probably still lighting a candle for me every Sunday, hoping I'll come home. And Vivian is probably running herself into the ground trying to fill the hole I left in Father's empire. I wonder if they hate me. I wonder if they've given up. Part of me hopes they have. It would be easier than knowing they're still searching, still hurting because of my choices. But I can't go back. I won't. This life with Ethan and Lucas is mine. Really, truly mine. No one else's expectations, no one else's plans, just us. Ethan closed the journal and sat in the dark kitchen, listening to Lucas's quiet breathing from the other room. Sarah had chosen this life, chosen him, chosen their simple existence over billions of dollars and power. That should have felt like a compliment, like proof of love. Instead, it felt like evidence of how desperate she'd been to escape. His phone lit up with a text from an unknown number. Against his better judgment, he opened it. The message was from Vivian. I found something, Claire's lawyer in Seattle. His name is Richard Chen. He still has her file. Can I give him your number? Ethan's heart started pounding. The letter. Sarah's explanation of everything, sitting in some lawyer's office for 3 years. He texted back. Yes. Tell him to call me tomorrow. The response came immediately. He'll call at 9 a.m. And Ethan, whatever the letter says, whatever Clara wrote, she loved you. I can tell from how you talk about her, how you've raised Lucas. She loved you. Ethan didn't respond. He sat in the dark until exhaustion finally pulled him to bed, where he dreamed of Sarah wearing elegant gowns and running through marble hallways, always just out of reach. The next morning, Lucas woke up full of questions about Aunt Vivian and the big house and when they could go back. Ethan made pancakes, badly, because he'd never gotten the hang of cooking, and tried to answer without revealing too much. So Mommy was Aunt Vivian's sister? Lucas doused his pancakes in syrup. But Mommy said she didn't have a sister. Mommy was complicated. Sometimes grown-ups keep secrets for reasons that make sense to them, even if those reasons are hard for other people to understand. Like when I hid the broken vase and said the cat did it. Not exactly like that, buddy. But Mommy didn't tell the truth about having a sister. That's like hiding something, right? Ethan sighed. 6-year-olds were too perceptive for their own good. Yeah, it's like hiding something, but Mommy had good reasons. She was trying to protect us. From what? From people who might have tried to change our family, to make us be something we're not. Lucas considered this while chewing his pancakes. Like when Tommy's parents got divorced and his dad wanted him to live in California, but Tommy wanted to stay here with his friends? Kind of like that. Your mom wanted to make sure we could all stay together and be happy. Oh. Lucas seemed satisfied with this explanation. Can Aunt Vivian come to my soccer game on Saturday? She's coming over Saturday afternoon, remember? After your game. But what if she wants to see me play soccer? I'm really good, Daddy. Coach says I have natural talent. I'll ask her. Ethan's phone rang, the screen showing a Seattle area code. His stomach dropped. Hey buddy, can you go brush your teeth? I need to take this call. Lucas scampered off, still chattering about soccer. Ethan waited until he heard the bathroom door close before answering. Mr. Cole? This is Richard Chen. I'm calling about Sarah Cole. Or rather, Clara Hart. Vivian Hart contacted me last night and explained the situation. You have a letter for me. Ethan's voice came out flat. From before Sarah died. I do. Clara came to me about 4 years ago and set up what we call a dead man switch arrangement. In the event of her death, I was to send certain documents to you. Chen paused. The problem is I never received notification that she died. No death certificate was filed under the name Clara Hart, and I had no way of knowing she was using the name Sarah Cole. So the letter's just been sitting there for 3 years. Yes. I'm deeply sorry, Mr. Cole. If I'd known, what's in it? I haven't read it. Attorney-client privilege. But Clara was very specific in her instructions. The letter was to be delivered to you, along with access to a secure account she'd maintained and several legal documents. Ethan's head was spinning. What kind of account? A trust fund she'd set up. I don't have the details. That information is in the documents I'm supposed to provide. But I can tell you it was substantial. How substantial? I believe the figure she mentioned was somewhere in the range of $5 million. The kitchen tilted. Ethan gripped the counter to steady himself. 5 million. Yes, she wanted to ensure you and her child would be taken care of if anything happened to her. Chen's voice was professionally gentle. Mr. Cole, I can overnight the letter and documents to you, or if you prefer, you're welcome to fly to Seattle and retrieve them in person. Send them. Ethan could barely get the words out. Overnight. I need to see what she wrote. Of course, I'll need your address. Ethan rattled it off mechanically, his mind stuck on the number. $5 million. Sarah, Clara, had hidden $5 million from him while he'd worked 60-hour weeks driving deliveries, while they'd scraped together rent, while he'd gone into debt paying her medical bills. The package will arrive tomorrow, Chen said. If you have any questions after reviewing the materials, please don't hesitate to contact me. Ethan hung up without saying goodbye. He stood in his cramped kitchen, surrounded by evidence of their struggle. The discount cereal, the worn linoleum, the refrigerator held together with duct tape, and felt something shift inside him. Not quite anger, not quite betrayal. Something colder and more confusing. Lucas emerged from the bathroom, toothpaste on his chin. Who was that? Just work stuff, buddy. Hey, how about we skip daycare today and go to the park? Really? On a Thursday? Really? Sometimes you need a mental health day. They spent the morning at the park, Lucas burning energy on the playground while Ethan sat on a bench and tried not to think about hidden millions and dead wives with secret identities. But his mind kept circling back to the same question. What else had Sarah kept from him? That evening, after Lucas was in bed, Ethan pulled out every document he had related to Sarah. Birth certificate? Fake. Social security card? Probably fake. Driver's license? Definitely fake. Their marriage certificate listed her as Sarah Marie Cole, born in Portland, parents deceased. All lies. Their entire marriage had been built on a foundation of fabricated documents and careful deception, and the worst part was, Ethan couldn't even be angry with her. She was dead. Anger required a target, and all he had was a ghost and a growing pile of revelations. His phone rang. Vivian again. Did the lawyer call? Yeah, he called. Ethan's voice was hollow. Did you know about the money? A pause. What money? Sarah, Clara, apparently set up a trust fund, $5 million. She just left it sitting there while we ate ramen for dinner and I worked double shifts. Oh, God. Vivian's shock sounded genuine. I had no idea. Clara's trust fund from father was frozen when she disappeared. He wanted to use it as leverage to force her back. But she must have had money saved from before, money he didn't know about. $5 million that could have changed our lives. Could have gotten Lucas into better schools, could have... Ethan cut himself off. Sorry. This isn't your problem. It is my problem. Lucas is my nephew, and you're... You were Clara's husband. That makes it my problem. Vivian's voice turned careful. What are you going to do with the money? I don't know. I haven't even seen the letter yet. Maybe it'll explain why she never told me. He laughed bitterly. Maybe she was planning to surprise me on our 10th anniversary or something. The lawyer said there were documents? Yeah, coming tomorrow. Can I? Vivian hesitated. Would you let me be there when you read the letter? I know I don't have any right to ask, but Clara was my sister. If there are explanations, answers about why she left, fine. Ethan was too tired to argue. Come over tomorrow evening, after Lucas is asleep, 7 o'clock. Thank you. The next day crawled by. Ethan went through the motions, dropped Lucas at daycare, drove his delivery route, picked Lucas up, made dinner. But his mind was elsewhere. The package arrived at 4 p.m., a thick envelope with a Seattle return address. Ethan put it on the kitchen counter and stared at it like it might explode. Lucas noticed immediately. What's that? Just some papers, buddy. Boring adult stuff. Can we have spaghetti for dinner? The kind from the box, not the kind you try to make. Yeah, we can do that. At 6:30, Ethan put Lucas to bed early, claiming it was a special treat to watch a movie in his room. Lucas, always happy for extra screen time, didn't argue. By 7 o'clock, he was engrossed in a Disney movie, and Ethan was pacing the kitchen waiting for Vivian. She arrived exactly on time, dressed casually for once in jeans and a simple sweater. She looked younger without the business armor, more like the photos of Clara in the albums. Is that it? She nodded at the envelope on the counter. Yeah, I haven't opened it yet. Are you sure you want me here for this? Ethan wasn't sure of anything anymore, but he nodded. Let's just get it over with. He tore open the envelope. Inside were several documents clipped together, and beneath them, a sealed letter with his name written in Sarah's familiar handwriting. Just seeing her writing after 3 years made his chest tight. Vivian reached for the documents. May I? Ethan nodded, unable to speak, and opened the letter with shaking hands. My dearest Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And God, I hope I'm wrong. I hope this letter sits in Richard Chen's office forever, collecting dust, because that means I got to grow old with you, that I got to see Lucas graduate high school, maybe college, that I got to be Sarah Cole until the day I died. But I've always known it was a possibility, that my past would catch up with me, or that random chance would take me away before I could explain. So here's the truth, all of it, even the parts that will make you hate me. My name is Clara Marie Hart. I was born into one of the wealthiest families in America. My father controlled a tech empire worth billions. My childhood was mansions and private schools and trust funds, and I was absolutely miserable. I won't bore you with the details. You can ask Vivian if you want the whole story. The short version is that I was a possession, not a person. My father had my entire life planned out, from my career to my marriage to the number of children I was expected to have to continue the Hart legacy. When I turned 22, he tried to arrange my marriage to a man I'd met exactly 3 times. I said no. He said I didn't have a choice, so I left. I spent 6 months preparing. I saved cash, created fake documents, learned how to disappear. And then one night I walked out of a family dinner and never looked back. I became Sarah Cole, got a job waitressing, rented a room in a terrible apartment. And for the first time in my life, I was free. Then I met you. I should have told you the truth. God knows I tried 100 times, but I was terrified. Not of you, you're the best man I've ever known. I was terrified of losing what we had. Because if my father found out where I was, who I'd married, he would have destroyed us. Not physically, but legally, financially. He would have buried you in lawsuits, dug up every piece of your past, made your life hell just to punish me for defying him. So I lied. I lied about my name, my past, my family. I let you think I was nobody from nowhere. And I'm so sorry. But here's what wasn't a lie. I loved you. From that first Thursday when you ordered coffee and pie with such careful politeness, like you were afraid of taking up too much space in the world. I loved how you worked 2 jobs to put yourself through school. I loved how you talked about wanting to be better, do better, build a life that mattered. I loved that you saw me, just Sarah, just a woman who burned pasta and liked old movies and thought that was enough. You never needed me to be more impressive or more polished or more anything. You just needed me. Every moment we spent together was the most real thing I've ever experienced. Our wedding in that tiny courthouse, the apartment we could barely afford, finding out I was pregnant and crying with happiness in our bathroom, bringing Lucas home from the hospital and being terrified we'd break him. That was my real life, the only one that ever mattered. I set up the trust fund because I knew there was a chance something could happen to me. Car accident, random illness, who knows? And I couldn't stand the thought of you struggling, of Lucas going without, because I'd been selfish enough to hide my past. $5 million is yours now. It's not even a fraction of what the Hart family is worth, but it's enough to give Lucas every opportunity. Good schools, college without debt, a life where he doesn't have to work himself to exhaustion like you did. I've also included legal documents giving you full control over Lucas's inheritance from the Hart family. When my father dies, and he will eventually, Lucas is entitled to a portion of the estate as my direct descendant. Vivian will fight to make sure he gets it. She always tried to protect me, even when I pushed her away. Which brings me to my sister. Vivian and I were never close growing up. She was the golden child, and I was the rebel. But she never deserved to be caught in the middle of my war with father. If she's the one who found you, if she's the one helping you read this letter, please don't shut her out. She's good people, even if she's a Hart. If she wants to be part of Lucas's life, let her. He deserves to know where he came from, even if his mother was too much of a coward to tell him herself. I know this is a lot. I know you probably hate me right now, and you have every right to. But please, please don't let any of this change how you remember our time together. It was real. Lucas is real. The love was real. You gave me 7 years of genuine happiness. 7 years of being exactly who I wanted to be. No one else ever gave me that gift. I hope you can forgive me. I hope Lucas grows up understanding that sometimes people make complicated choices for simple reasons. And I hope that someday, when enough time has passed, you find someone new, someone honest and good, who deserves you. You're an incredible father and an incredible man. Don't let my secrets make you doubt that. All my love, forever, Clara P.S. There's one more thing in the safe deposit box at Seattle First National. The key and box number are in the documents. It's for Lucas, when he's old enough to understand. It's the truth about the Hart family, about me, about everything. But please, don't give it to him until he's ready. Some truths are too heavy for children. Ethan read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face. Across the table, Vivian was crying too, having read over his shoulder. She really loved you, Vivian whispered. The Clara I knew was never that vulnerable with anyone. She left a whole other set of documents. Ethan's voice was hoarse. For Lucas. For when he's older. That sounds like Clara. Always planning ahead. Vivian wiped her eyes. What are you going to do with the money? I don't know. Put it in trust for Lucas, probably. Use some for better schools. He looked at the documents. Bank information, legal papers, the key to a safe deposit box. This doesn't change anything. She's still gone. The money doesn't bring her back. No, but it means she was thinking about you until the end, trying to take care of you even after she was gone. They sat in silence for a while, the weight of Clara's words settling over them like snow. Finally, Vivian spoke. The document she mentioned, Lucas's inheritance from the Hart estate. Our father died 5 years ago. Lucas is entitled to a significant portion. How significant? Tens of millions, maybe more, depending on how the company's valued. Vivian met his eyes. I've been holding it in trust, waiting to find Clara's heir. Now I have. Ethan's head spun. I don't want it. It's not about what you want. It's Lucas's birthright. Clara wanted him to have it. Lucas is 6. He doesn't need tens of millions of dollars. He needs stability and love and a normal childhood. He can have both. Vivian leaned forward. Ethan, I'm not trying to take over your life or turn Lucas into some trophy heir, but this money could give him opportunities. I don't want him corrupted by it. I don't want him growing up thinking money solves everything, that he's special because he was born into wealth. Is that what you think of me? Vivian's voice turned sharp. That I'm corrupted? That the money makes me less of a person? I think it made your sister run away and fake her own death to escape. The words came out harsher than Ethan intended. I think it turned your father into someone who saw his own daughter as a chess piece. And I think Lucas is better off without any of it. Vivian stood abruptly. You're making decisions based on fear. Clara ran from our father's control, not from money itself. There's a difference. Is there? Because from where I'm sitting, your whole family seems pretty messed up by wealth and power. And from where I'm sitting, you're letting pride stop you from accepting help that could change your son's life. Vivian's composure was cracking. Do you have any idea how hard it is to raise a child alone? I'm offering you resources, support, family. I've been doing fine on my own. Have you? Vivian gestured around the small apartment. Working yourself to exhaustion for rent you can barely afford? Worried about daycare fees? This doesn't have to be so hard, Ethan. Let me help. I don't need your help. But Lucas might. The words hung in the air between them. Clara wrote that letter 4 years ago before she died. She wanted you to use that money for Lucas. Are you really going to ignore her last wishes because you're too stubborn to accept help from a heart? Ethan wanted to argue, but she was right. This wasn't about him. It was about Lucas. About giving his son every advantage, every opportunity. The kind of opportunities Ethan had never had. I need time, he said finally, to process all of this. The letter, the money, everything. Of course. Vivian's voice softened. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. No, you're right. I am being stubborn. Ethan rubbed his face. This is just a lot. I know. Vivian gathered her purse. I should go, but Ethan, I'm still coming Saturday to see Lucas, if that's still okay. Yeah, Saturday, 2 o'clock. After she left, Ethan sat alone with Clara's letter, reading it again and again until he had it memorized. She'd loved him. Despite the lies, despite the deception, she genuinely loved him. That should have been enough. But doubt gnawed at him. Had she loved him, or had she loved the escape he represented? Had Sarah Cole been real, or just another carefully constructed identity, as fake as the documents in Richard Chen's office? He didn't have answers. All he had was a 6-year-old son sleeping in the next room, $5 million he hadn't asked for, and a dead wife who'd turned out to be someone completely different from who he'd thought. Ethan folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope. Tomorrow he'd figure out what to do with the money, how to explain any of this to Lucas, how to navigate a relationship with Vivian Hart. Tomorrow he'd be strong and responsible and figure everything out. Tonight, he just let himself grieve. Not for Sarah Cole, who'd never really existed, but for Clara Hart, who'd been so desperate to escape that she'd erased herself. And for the 7 years of happiness she'd managed to steal before fate caught up with her. Saturday arrived with the kind of crisp autumn weather that made everything feel possible. Lucas was up before dawn, bouncing around the apartment in his soccer uniform, too excited about both his game and Aunt Vivian's visit to sit still for breakfast. Do you think she'll bring presents? Lucas asked for the 3rd time, shoveling cereal into his mouth. Tommy's aunt always brings presents when she visits. I don't know, buddy. And remember, we don't expect people to bring us things. Ethan poured himself another cup of coffee, his 3rd of the morning. He'd barely slept, Clara's letter playing on repeat in his mind. Aunt Vivian is coming to spend time with you. That's the gift. But maybe she'll bring something small, like a toy or a book. Maybe, we'll see. The soccer game was at 9, giving Ethan plenty of time to overthink Vivian's afternoon visit. He'd spent the previous evening cleaning the apartment with an intensity that bordered on obsessive, scrubbing the bathroom tile, organizing the kitchen cabinets, trying to make their small space look less shabby. It was futile. You couldn't polish poverty, but he'd tried anyway. At the soccer field, Lucas ran off to join his team while Ethan found a spot on the bleachers next to the other parents. Most of them he recognized by sight, but didn't really know. Working 60 hours a week didn't leave much time for playground friendships and coffee meetups. Your boy's got a good foot on him, the man next to Ethan commented as Lucas received a pass and sent it sailing toward the goal. You played soccer growing up? Basketball, actually. His mom was the soccer player. The lie came automatically. Then Ethan caught himself. Sarah hadn't played soccer, but maybe Clara had. He didn't even know anymore. The game passed in a blur of running children and shouted encouragement. Lucas's team won 3-2, with Lucas scoring the final goal. He came running off the field, sweaty and grinning, throwing himself into Ethan's arms. Did you see, Daddy? Did you see my goal? I saw, buddy. You were amazing. Can we get ice cream to celebrate? After Aunt Vivian leaves, okay? We need to go home and get ready for her visit. Lucas's face fell slightly. Does she not like ice cream? I'm sure she does. But she's coming to see you, not go out for treats. Back at the apartment, Ethan managed to get Lucas through a shower and into clean clothes before the doorbell rang at precisely 2 o'clock. Vivian stood in the hallway holding a wrapped box and looking nervous, her designer jeans and cashmere sweater somehow still managing to look expensive despite the casual styling. I know you said no gifts, she said quickly, before Ethan could speak, but I saw this and thought Lucas might like it. If it's inappropriate, I can take it back. Lucas was already at the door, eyes wide at the box. Is that for me? If your dad says it's okay, Vivian looked at Ethan uncertainly. Ethan wanted to refuse on principle, to prove he couldn't be bought with expensive presents. But Lucas was looking at him with such hope that he couldn't bring himself to be the bad guy. One gift is fine. Thank you. Lucas tore into the wrapping paper with 6-year-old enthusiasm, revealing a large illustrated book about space and astronomy. He opened it carefully, eyes growing wider as he turned the pages. Look, Daddy, there's pictures of all the planets and black holes, and this one shows what stars look like when they're born. He looked up at Vivian. How did you know I like space? You mentioned it when we had breakfast at the diner. Vivian smiled, looking genuinely pleased. You said your favorite planet was Saturn because of the rings. You remembered. Lucas clutched the book to his chest. Can we read it together? I'd love that. They settled on the couch, Lucas wedged between Ethan and Vivian, the astronomy book spread across their laps. Vivian read in a clear, expressive voice, stopping whenever Lucas had questions and never talking down to him. Ethan watched them together, seeing the physical resemblance now that he knew to look for it. The same hazel eyes, the same way their faces lit up when they were excited about something. Mommy liked space too, Lucas said suddenly, pointing to a nebula on the page. She used to take me outside at night and show me constellations. She said they were like stories written in stars. Vivian's voice caught. Did she? What constellations did she show you? Orion. That's the Hunter. And the Big Dipper, which isn't really a constellation, it's an asterism. Lucas pronounced the word carefully, proud of knowing it. And Cassiopeia, which looks like a W. Mommy said Cassiopeia was a queen who was so beautiful she made the gods jealous. I taught her that story, Vivian said softly. When we were little, Clara and I used to sneak up to the roof of our house and look at stars. Our father hated it, said it was dangerous and unladylike. But Clara loved it anyway. Did you look at Cassiopeia together? All the time. It was our favorite. Vivian's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Your mommy remembered. They read for another hour, Lucas asking endless questions about planets and gravity and whether aliens might exist. Vivian answered what she could and admitted when she didn't know, which Lucas seemed to appreciate more than having all the answers. You're smart, Lucas announced. Like Daddy. He knows lots of stuff too. Your daddy is very smart, Vivian agreed, glancing at Ethan. And you're lucky to have him. I know, Daddy takes good care of me. Lucas yawned, the excitement of the day catching up with him. Even when he's tired from work, he still reads me stories and makes breakfast and comes to all my soccer games. Ethan's throat tightened. That's what dads do, buddy. Not all dads. Tommy's dad missed his birthday because he had to work, and Sarah M's dad doesn't live with her anymore. Lucas leaned against Vivian's shoulder, his eyes drooping. I'm glad my dad is the good kind. Me too, Vivian whispered. Within minutes, Lucas had dozed off, the astronomy book sliding from his lap. Ethan carefully extracted him from between them and carried him to the pull-out couch, tucking the blanket around his shoulders. When he came back to the living room, Vivian was standing by the window, looking out at the parking lot below. He's wonderful, she said without turning around. Clara would be so proud. He's the best thing that ever happened to me. Ethan stood awkwardly, not sure what to do with his hands. Thank you for the book. That was thoughtful. I wasn't trying to buy his affection. Vivian finally turned to face him. I know how that must look, rich aunt swooping in with expensive gifts. But I saw it in a bookstore window and thought of what he'd said about Saturn, and I wanted him to know I was listening. I know, and he loved it, really. Ethan gestured to the small kitchen table. Do you want coffee? I should warn you, it's not fancy. Coffee sounds perfect. They sat across from each other while the coffee brewed, the silence stretching uncomfortably. Finally, Vivian spoke. I've been thinking about Claire's letter, about what she wrote regarding Lucas's inheritance. I've been thinking about it too. Ethan poured coffee into mismatched mugs. And I don't know what to do. Part of me wants to refuse all of it, to prove I can raise Lucas without heart money, but that's pride talking, not sense. Can I be honest with you? Please. I think you're looking at this wrong. Vivian wrapped her hands around her mug. You see the heart money as something that corrupted my family, something Clara ran from, and you're not entirely wrong, but the money itself wasn't the problem. It was how my father used it, as control, as leverage, as a way to own people. Sounds pretty corrupting to me. It can be, but it doesn't have to be. Vivian leaned forward. Money is a tool. My father used it as a weapon. Clara used it to buy her freedom. You could use it to give Lucas opportunities, not to make him spoiled or entitled, but to open doors. What kind of doors? Good schools where he'd be challenged, travel to see the world, art classes, music lessons, whatever interests he develops, college without debt. Vivian's voice was earnest. The chance to pursue his dreams without worrying about money the way you had to. Ethan thought about his own childhood, about wearing the same 3 shirts to school because his parents couldn't afford more, about skipping meals to save money, about choosing a cheaper college because it was all he could manage even with loans. I don't want him to be soft, he said. I want him to understand the value of work, of earning things. Then teach him that. Set boundaries, give him chores, make him understand that privilege comes with responsibility. Vivian's eyes were intense. But don't make him struggle just because you did. That's not character building, Ethan. That's just needless hardship. You sound like you've thought about this a lot. I have. Because when Clara disappeared, I inherited everything she left behind. Her trust fund, her share of the company, all of it. And I spent years wondering if I should give it away, if keeping it made me complicit in our father's sins. She took a sip of coffee. But then I realized that money could do good if I used it right. So I donate to causes Clara would have cared about. I fund scholarships for kids who want to study art. I try to be the kind of person she would have been proud of. And you think I should do the same? Use Clara's money to honor her memory? I think you should use it to give Lucas the life Clara wanted him to have. Not a life of excess or entitlement, but a life of possibility. Vivian set down her mug. And I think you should let me be part of that. Not as someone trying to take over or control things, but as family. As someone who loved Clara and wants to love her son. The word hung between them. Family. It was such a loaded concept. More complicated than DNA. More fraught than simple affection. What does that look like? Ethan asked. You being part of Lucas's life? I don't know. We'd figure it out together. Vivian's voice was tentative. Maybe I come to his soccer games sometimes. Maybe we have dinner once a month. Maybe when he's older I can tell him stories about Clara that you don't know. About her childhood, her dreams, the person she was before she became Sarah. He'll have questions. About why his mother left. Why she lied. Why she never told us about her family. Then we answer them honestly. Age appropriately, but honestly. Vivian met his eyes. Kids are more resilient than we give them credit for, and they can handle complicated truths better than adults sometimes. Ethan thought about the safe deposit box in Seattle, about whatever documents Clara had left for Lucas when he was older. She left something for him. Explanations, I think, about the Hart family and why she left. She said to give it to him when he's ready. When do you think that will be? I have no idea. 12? 16? 21? Ethan ran his hands through his hair. How do you explain to a kid that his mother faked her identity and lied to everyone for 7 years? You start by explaining that she did it because she was brave enough to choose her own life, even when it was hard. Vivian's voice was firm. You make sure he understands that Clara's lies weren't about him or you. They were about surviving a family that tried to cage her. And what about your father, Lucas's grandfather? Do I tell him about the man who was so controlling that his own daughter had to disappear? Vivian flinched. My father was complicated. He built an empire from nothing, which I respect. but he never learned that people aren't assets to be managed, especially not his own children. She paused. When you do tell Lucas about him, I hope you'll also tell him that not all hearts are like that some of us learned from those mistakes. Are you including yourself in that? I'm trying to. Vivian's smile was sad. I spent so many years trying to be the perfect heart daughter, doing everything father wanted, thinking that if I was good enough, successful enough, he'd ease up on Clara. But it didn't work. It just made Clara feel more alone. She wrote about you in her journal, said you tried to protect her. Not well enough. The guilt in Vivian's voice was palpable. I should have fought harder, should have stood up to father, even if it meant losing everything. Maybe if I had, Clara wouldn't have felt like she needed to run. Or maybe she still would have. Some people are just built to rebel. Ethan thought about Sarah, Clara, with her fierce independence, her refusal to be owned. I don't think anything you did or didn't do would have changed who she was. Maybe, but I'll never know for sure. Vivian looked toward the couch where Lucas slept. Which is why I don't want to make the same mistakes with Lucas. I don't want to be the aunt who tries to control or manipulate or turn him into something he's not. I just want to be present, to be someone he can count on. That's all he needs, someone who shows up. Ethan's voice was rough. Someone who's there. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows. Finally, Ethan spoke. Okay? Okay? Okay, you can be part of his life, part of our lives. The words felt momentous, like opening a door he'd been keeping locked. But we do this slowly. We don't tell Lucas about the inheritance yet, or the Heart Empire, or any of it. We just let him know you as Aunt Vivian, who brings books and answers questions about stars. I can do that. Relief flooded Vivian's face. Thank you, Ethan. You have no idea what this means to me. I think I do. He looked at her, really looked, and saw the loneliness beneath the polished exterior. You lost your sister 13 years ago, and then you found out she'd been alive this whole time, building a life you never got to be part of. That has to hurt. It does. But finding Lucas, knowing that Clara was happy, that she had love and a family, that helps. Vivian's voice broke slightly. I spent so many years imagining the worst, that she was dead in a ditch somewhere, or living on the streets, or trapped in some terrible situation. Knowing she had 7 good years with you and Lucas, knowing she got to be a mother, that's more than I ever hoped for. Lucas stirred on the couch, blinking sleepily. Is Aunt Vivian still here? Still here, Vivian called back. Did you have a good nap? Yeah, Lucas sat up, his hair sticking up at odd angles. Can we read more of the space book? Actually, I have an idea. Vivian pulled out her phone. There's a planetarium about 30 minutes from here. They have a show at 4 o'clock about black holes. Would you like to go? Lucas's face lit up. Really? Can we, Daddy? Please? Ethan wanted to say no, to keep the boundaries clear, to not let Vivian sweep in and become the fun aunt with unlimited resources. But he looked at his son's eager face and Vivian's hopeful expression, and he couldn't find a good reason to refuse. Okay, but we're buying our own tickets. Deal. Vivian smiled, and for the first time since Ethan had met her, it reached her eyes. The planetarium was crowded with families, kids pressing their faces against displays of moon rocks and meteorites. Lucas was in heaven, dragging both adults from exhibit to exhibit, asking questions faster than they could answer them. In the darkened theater, when the dome overhead filled with stars, and the narrator began explaining the physics of black holes, Lucas reached out and grabbed both Ethan's hand and Vivian's, holding them tight. Ethan glanced over at Vivian in the darkness and saw tears streaming down her face. She mouthed, "Thank you," across Lucas's head, and Ethan nodded, his own throat too tight to speak. This was what Clara had wanted, he realized. Not the money or the inheritance or the connection to the Hart legacy. She'd wanted Lucas to be loved, to be surrounded by people who would show up for him, who would take him to planetariums and answer his questions and hold his hand in the dark. After the show, they got ice cream at a shop near the planetarium. Lucas ordered a cone with 3 scoops and rainbow sprinkles, talking non-stop about gravitational singularities and event horizons. Vivian listened with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions and admitting when she didn't understand something. "You're good with him," Ethan said quietly while Lucas was distracted by his ice cream. He makes it easy. He's so curious and open and kind. Vivian watched Lucas with undisguised affection. Clara would have loved seeing him like this. She did, for 3 years. The words came out more bitter than Ethan intended. Then some drunk driver took that away from both of them. Vivian's expression shifted, becoming more guarded. About that, my security team finished reviewing the accident report. Ethan's stomach dropped. And it was exactly what the police said. A tragic accident. The other driver was 3 times over the legal limit, ran a red light, died on impact. There's no conspiracy, no foul play, nothing suspicious. She paused. I'm sorry I made you worry about that. I was being paranoid. No, I'm glad you checked. I needed to know for sure. Ethan felt a weight lift that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. At least now I know it was just bad luck. Not someone from her past catching up with her. Just bad luck, Vivian repeated, but something in her tone made Ethan look at her more closely. What aren't you telling me? Nothing. It's just... She hesitated. The lawyer, Richard Chen. He said Clara came to see him 4 years ago to set up the trust and the letter. That was only a year before she died. So? So I'm wondering what prompted it. Why, after 3 years of living as Sarah Cole, did she suddenly decide to put her affairs in order? What made her think about death? She was pregnant with Lucas. People think about mortality when they're about to become parents. But even as Ethan said it, doubt crept in. Sarah had set up the trust when Lucas was 3, not before he was born. Maybe. Vivian didn't sound convinced. Or maybe something happened, something that made her worry her past was catching up with her. The accident report said, I know what it said, and I believe it. Vivian's voice was firm. I'm not suggesting anything sinister, Ethan. I'm just saying that Clara was scared of something 4 years ago, scared enough to plan for the worst. Lucas chose that moment to drop his ice cream cone, erupting into tears. The conversation was forgotten as they dealt with the crisis, buying a replacement cone and cleaning chocolate ice cream off his shirt. By the time they got back to the apartment, it was nearly 7, and Lucas was exhausted from the day's excitement. Can Aunt Vivian help put me to bed? He asked through a yawn. Ethan glanced at Vivian, who looked like she might cry again. If she wants to. I'd love to. They went through the bedtime routine together, pajamas, teeth brushing, the nightly negotiation over how many stories Lucas could have. Vivian read from the astronomy book she'd brought, her voice soft and soothing. Lucas was asleep before she finished the 2nd chapter. He looks so peaceful, Vivian whispered, standing over the sleeping child. So innocent. He is, and I want to keep him that way as long as possible. Ethan ushered her out of the room, leaving the door cracked, which is why we're not telling him about billions of dollars or corporate empires or any of that until he's old enough to handle it. I understand, and I agree. Vivian collected her purse, preparing to leave. Thank you for today, for letting me be part of this. It means everything. He likes you, and honestly, I think you're good for him. He needs people besides me. The admission was harder than Ethan expected. I've been so focused on protecting him that I forgot he needs more than just protection. He needs family. And you? Vivian paused at the door. What do you need? The question caught Ethan off guard. I need Lucas to be okay. That's all that matters. That's not what I asked. Her eyes were too perceptive. When's the last time you did something for yourself? Went on a date? Saw friends? Had a life that wasn't just work and parenting? I don't have time for that. Maybe you should make time. Clara wouldn't want you to spend the rest of your life alone, throwing everything into Lucas and ignoring your own needs. I'm fine. You're surviving. There's a difference. Vivian's voice was gentle. And before you tell me to mind my own business, remember that Clara wrote in her letter that she hoped you'd find someone new. She wanted you to be happy, Ethan. Not just functional, but actually happy. I'll work on that after Lucas is grown and out of the house. That's 17 years from now. That's a long time to put your life on hold. She touched his arm briefly. Just think about it, okay? After she left, Ethan stood in his quiet apartment, her words echoing in his head. When was the last time he'd thought about his own happiness? When was the last time he'd wanted anything beyond making sure Lucas had what he needed? He couldn't remember. That night, after Lucas was asleep, Ethan pulled out his laptop and did something he'd been avoiding. He looked up the Hart family online, reading articles about Jonathan Hart's business empire, about Vivian's rise to CEO, about Clara's mysterious disappearance that had never quite left the gossip columns. The photos shocked him. There were dozens of Clara at charity galas, at company events, at family gatherings. She always looked beautiful and miserable, her smile never reaching her eyes. And next to her in many of the photos was Vivian, polished and perfect, playing the role of dutiful daughter while her sister slowly suffocated. One article, published 6 months after Clara's disappearance, quoted Jonathan Hart. "My daughter made her choice. The Hart legacy will continue with or without her." Cold, dismissive. No wonder Clara had run. Another article, this one from 2 years ago when Jonathan Hart died, showed Vivian at the funeral. She stood alone at the grave, no family beside her, her face a mask of composure. The caption read, "Vivian Hart, sole heir to the Hart empire, lays her father to rest. Her sister Clara remains missing, whereabouts unknown." Ethan stared at that photo for a long time, understanding for the first time how truly alone Vivian had been. She'd lost her sister, her mother, her father. She'd been running a billion-dollar company by herself, carrying the weight of the Hart legacy with no one to share the burden. And now she'd found Lucas, found family, and Ethan had almost turned her away because of his own pride and fear. His phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. "Thank you again for today. Lucas is a gift. Sleep well." Ethan typed back. "He had a great time. Thank you for the book and the planetarium. Same time next Saturday?" The response came almost immediately. "I'd love that." "Good night, Ethan." He set the phone down and returned to the articles, reading everything he could find about Clara's disappearance, about the Hart family history, about the world his son was technically heir to. It was overwhelming and alien, a universe of wealth and power that Ethan had never imagined being part of. But it was Lucas's birthright, and whether Ethan liked it or not, that made it his responsibility to understand. He stayed up until 2 in the morning, researching and reading, trying to reconcile the Sarah he'd known with the Clara who stared out from these photographs. They were the same person, he told himself. The Sarah who'd laughed at his terrible jokes and burned dinner and loved him fiercely. She'd been real. Clara had simply been her name, but doubt lingered. Because the woman in these photos looked nothing like the Sarah he'd married. She looked trapped, desperate, broken. And Ethan couldn't help wondering which version had been the performance and which had been real. Or if maybe both had been true, in their own complicated way. The following weeks fell into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Vivian came over every Saturday, always bringing something thoughtful. A book Lucas had mentioned wanting, tickets to a museum, once a telescope that made Ethan uncomfortable until Lucas's sheer joy at seeing the moon's craters made him swallow his objections. They developed routines. Breakfast at the diner where Sarah had once worked, afternoons at the park, evenings reading together on Ethan's worn couch. Lucas blossomed under the attention, his naturally curious nature finding a willing audience in Vivian. She never talked down to him, never dismissed his questions as childish, and she had a way of explaining complex things that made Lucas feel smart rather than small. Ethan watched them together and felt something complicated stirring in his chest. Gratitude mixed with grief, relief tangled with guilt. Because the more time he spent with Vivian, the more he saw Clara in her mannerisms. The way she tilted her head when concentrating, the unconscious habit of tucking hair behind her ear, the exact cadence of her laugh when Lucas said something unexpectedly funny. It was like living with a ghost, except the ghost was real, and sitting on his couch, helping his son with homework. It was the 5th Saturday of their new arrangement when things shifted. Lucas had fallen asleep early after a particularly exhausting day at a science museum, leaving Ethan and Vivian alone in the small living room with the awkwardness that sometimes descended when they weren't focusing on the child between them. "I've been thinking about the trust fund," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "Clara's $5 million. I want to set it up for Lucas's education and future, like she intended, but I'd like your help navigating the legal side." Vivian looked surprised. "Of course, I can connect you with my financial advisors. They're very good." I also want to start putting money aside for my own income. Even if it's not much, I need Lucas to see that I'm contributing, that I'm not just living off his mother's money. Ethan, you're raising him alone while working full-time. That's contributing more than any amount of money could. Maybe, but I need to feel like I'm pulling my weight. He ran his hands through his hair, a gesture he'd started making more often lately. It's hard, accepting that Sarah, Clara, had all this wealth the whole time we were struggling. Part of me is grateful she set up the trust, but part of me is angry that she let us live paycheck to paycheck when she could have made everything easier. She was protecting you. Vivian's voice was gentle. If she'd used Hart money, my father could have traced it, could have found her. Your father's been dead for 5 years. She could have told me the truth after he died. Could she? Vivian leaned forward, her eyes intense. By that point, she'd been living as Sarah Cole for 8 years. The lie had become her reality. How do you suddenly tell your husband that everything he knows about you is false? Where do you even start that conversation? Ethan wanted to argue, but he couldn't, because Vivian was right. The longer Clara had maintained the deception, the harder it would have become to reveal the truth. Each passing year would have made the confession more impossible, the fear of losing everything more paralyzing. I just wish she'd trusted me, he said quietly. I would have understood. I would have kept her secret. I'm sure she knew that intellectually, but fear doesn't respond to logic. Vivian's voice carried the weight of experience. I watched Clara live in fear of our father for 22 years. That kind of terror doesn't just disappear because the threat is gone. It becomes part of who you are. They sat in silence for a moment, the shared grief for the same woman creating a strange intimacy between them. Ethan was suddenly aware of how close Vivian was sitting, how her perfume, something subtle and expensive, filled the small space between them. Can I ask you something personal? Vivian's voice was hesitant. Sure. Do you ever think about dating again? It's been 3 years since Clara died. That's a long time to be alone. The question made Ethan uncomfortable. I'm not alone. I have Lucas. That's not the same thing, and you know it. Her eyes searched his face. Don't you miss having a partner? Someone to talk to at the end of the day? Someone to share things with? I barely have time to sleep, much less date. Between work and Lucas and now these Saturday visits, my schedule's pretty full. That's an excuse, not a reason. Maybe I don't want to date. The words came out sharper than intended. Maybe I'm fine with my life the way it is. Are you? Or are you just afraid of moving on because it feels like betrayal? Ethan stood abruptly, needing space. I think we should call it a night. Vivian rose as well, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have pushed. It's none of my business. No, it's not. But even as he said it, Ethan knew he was being unfair. She'd asked a legitimate question, one he'd been avoiding asking himself. At the door, Vivian paused. For what it's worth, I understand the guilt. I haven't dated anyone seriously since Clara disappeared. It felt wrong somehow, like I was living a life she couldn't have. That's different, is it? She met his eyes, and Ethan saw something there he'd been deliberately ignoring. We're both stuck, Ethan. Both of us holding on to someone who's gone, using that grief as an excuse not to move forward. After she left, Ethan poured himself a drink, whiskey from the cheap bottle he kept in the back of a cabinet, and tried not to think about what she'd said. But her words echoed in his head, mixing with Clara's letter, with the loneliness that sometimes hit him late at night when Lucas was asleep and the apartment felt too quiet. He missed having someone. Missed the simple comfort of another person in bed beside him, of shared morning coffee, of having someone who cared about his day. But every time he tried to imagine dating, he felt the weight of guilt pressing down on him. Clara had been gone 3 years, but it felt like a betrayal to even consider replacing her. The next week passed in a blur of deliveries and daycare pickups and the mundane chaos of single parenting. Lucas had started asking more questions about his mother, prompted by Vivian's stories and the photographs she kept sharing. Ethan tried to answer honestly without revealing too much, walking a tightrope between truth and age-appropriate information. Was Mommy rich like Aunt Vivian? Lucas asked one night during dinner. Ethan nearly choked on his pasta. What makes you ask that? Aunt Vivian lives in a really big house. And she has nice things, and she said she and Mommy grew up together, so I thought maybe they were both rich. They came from a wealthy family, yeah, but your mom chose to live simply. She didn't care about money or big houses. Why not? Because she cared about other things more, like being happy and being free to make her own choices and being with people she loved. Ethan chose his words carefully. Sometimes people who have a lot of money find out it doesn't make them happy. Your mom figured that out early. Lucas seemed to accept this, returning his attention to his spaghetti, but Ethan knew more questions would come. They always did. Saturday arrived again, and with it Vivian carrying a bag of groceries instead of her usual gift. "I thought maybe I could cook dinner for you two tonight," she said, almost shyly. "If that's okay, I know you usually do pizza on Saturdays." "You can cook?" The question came out before Ethan could stop it. Vivian laughed. "I'm not completely useless domestically. I had to learn after my parents died and the house staff retired. It was either learn to cook or live on takeout forever." Lucas was immediately excited by the prospect of anything different from their usual routine. "Can you make spaghetti? Real spaghetti, not from a box?" "I can make spaghetti with homemade sauce and fresh pasta. How does that sound?" "Amazing!" Ethan watched Vivian move around his small kitchen with surprising confidence, chopping vegetables and boiling water, occasionally asking where he kept various utensils. She dressed more casually than usual, jeans and a simple blouse, and without her usual armor of designer clothes and perfect makeup, she looked younger, more approachable. "Clara taught me to make this sauce," she said, stirring tomatoes and herbs in a pot. "It was one of the few things we did together that Father approved of. He thought cooking was a useful skill for hosting dinner parties. But Clara used it differently," Ethan guessed. "She used to make huge batches and give it away to homeless shelters. Said if she had to learn fancy cooking, she'd at least use it for something good." Vivian's smile was sad. Father never found out. He would have been furious. Hearts don't associate with charity cases, only prestigious foundations. Lucas was sitting at the kitchen table, supposedly doing homework, but actually watching Vivian cook with rapt attention. "Aunt Vivian, did you and Mommy fight a lot?" "Sometimes. Most siblings do." Vivian didn't break her stirring rhythm. "We were very different people. I liked following rules and your mom liked breaking them, but we loved each other, even when we didn't understand each other." "I wish I had a sibling," Lucas said wistfully. "Then I'd have someone to fight with." The words hit Ethan like a punch. He'd never thought about giving Lucas a sibling, never even considered dating seriously enough to imagine that future. His son would grow up alone, an only child with no extended family except the aunt who'd appeared out of nowhere. Dinner was surprisingly good, better than anything Ethan had made in years. They ate at the small table, Lucas chattering about school while Vivian and Ethan exchanged glances over his head. There was something domestic about the scene, something that felt dangerously like family. After Lucas went to bed, Vivian helped clean up despite Ethan's protests. They worked in comfortable silence, falling into an easy rhythm of washing and drying dishes. "Thank you for dinner," Ethan said. "You didn't have to do that." "I wanted to. It felt nice cooking for people again. I usually just eat whatever the chef prepares at the house." She dried the last plate carefully. "It's lonely, eating by yourself in that big dining room every night. You could hire more staff, have people around. That's not the same as having family." Vivian set down the dish towel and turned to face him. "Can I be honest about something?" "You're always honest." "I'm falling in love with Lucas." The words came out in a rush. "Not in a creepy way. I just mean he's my nephew and he's wonderful and I look forward to Saturdays all week. And the thought of ever losing access to him terrifies me." "You're not going to lose access to him." Ethan was surprised by how much he meant it. "Your family. You're his aunt. That's not going to change." "But what if you meet someone? What if you remarry and your new wife doesn't want me around? What if Lucas grows up and decides he doesn't need some random rich aunt in his life?" "Then we'll deal with it. But right now, today, you're important to him, to both of us." The admission felt significant. "I know I was resistant at first, and I'm sorry for that. But you've been good for Lucas. He's happier when you're around." "And you?" Vivian's voice was quiet. Am I good for you too? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications Ethan wasn't ready to examine. You're good for our family. That's what matters. Something flickered in Vivian's expression. Disappointment maybe, or resignation. But she smiled and collected her purse. I should go. Same time next week? Actually, I was thinking maybe we could do something different. Lucas has a school play on Wednesday night. He's a tree in the forest scene. Would you want to come? Vivian's face lit up with such genuine joy that Ethan felt his chest tighten. I'd love that. Text me the details? After she left, Ethan sat in the dark living room and tried to understand what was happening. Somewhere along the way, Vivian had stopped being just Lucas's aunt and had become something more complicated. A friend, maybe? Or something that could become more than friendship if he let it. But that was impossible. She was Clara's sister, his dead wife's sister. The wrongness of even thinking about Vivian in romantic terms made his skin crawl with guilt. Except it didn't, not really. And that was the most terrifying part. The school play was everything elementary school productions were supposed to be. Chaotic, adorable, and slightly too long. Lucas stood perfectly still as his tree, occasionally swaying when the narrator mentioned wind. Ethan and Vivian sat together in the audience, both recording on their phones, both applauding perhaps too enthusiastically when Lucas's scene ended. He was the best tree there, Vivian whispered. Definitely. Most realistic swaying. They grinned at each other in the darkness, and Ethan felt something shift. A warmth that had nothing to do with the stuffy auditorium, a connection that went beyond their shared love for Lucas. After the play, they took Lucas for ice cream to celebrate his theatrical debut. He was flying high on the attention, talking a mile a minute about how nervous he'd been and how the girl next to him had forgotten her lines and how Mr. Peterson, the drama teacher, had said they all did great. I'm so proud of you, Vivian said, and Lucas beamed. Will you come to my next play? In the spring? I'm going to try out for a speaking part. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Watching them together, Ethan felt the last of his resistance crumbling. Vivian wasn't trying to replace Clara or take over their lives. She was just trying to be family, to fill the lonely spaces in all their lives with connection and care. That night, after dropping Vivian at her car and getting Lucas home and settled, Ethan did something he'd been avoiding. He called his mother. Ethan, is everything okay? It's late there. His mother's voice was worried. He didn't usually call except on Sundays. Everything's fine, Mom. I just needed to talk to you about something. Is it Lucas? Is he sick? No, Lucas is great. Actually, that's kind of what I'm calling about. Ethan took a deep breath. Do you remember how Sarah said she didn't have any family? Of course, poor girl, all alone in the world. She lied. She had a sister, a whole wealthy family she was hiding from. The story came pouring out, Clara's true identity, Vivian's appearance, the DNA test, the trust fund, all of it. His mother listened without interrupting, which Ethan appreciated. When he finally finished, there was a long silence. My God, she said finally, that poor child running from her own family like that. That's your reaction? Not that she lied to all of us? She did what she had to do to survive, honey. I can't fault her for that. His mother's voice was gentle. And it sounds like this Vivian woman is trying to make amends for whatever drove Clara away. She is. She's been wonderful with Lucas, with both of us. Ethan hesitated. That's actually why I'm calling. I'm feeling confused about some things. What kind of confused? The kind where I might be developing feelings for my dead wife's sister. The words came out in a rush. Which is wrong, right? That's wrong. His mother was quiet for a moment. Is she developing feelings for you too? I don't know, maybe. There are moments where it feels like there's something there, but I might be imagining it. And how does that make you feel? When you think something might be there? Guilty, like I'm betraying Sarah's memory. Ethan rubbed his eyes. But also kind of hopeful, which makes me feel even more guilty. Ethan, honey, you're allowed to move on. Sarah's been gone for 3 years. You're allowed to want companionship, to want love again. But with her sister, that feels wrong. Why? Because society says so? His mother's voice was firm. Or because you genuinely think Sarah would be upset? Ethan thought about Clara's letter, about her explicit wish that he find someone new. She wrote that she wanted me to move on, to find happiness again. Then maybe you should listen to her. But what if I'm just transferring my feelings for Sarah onto Vivian because she looks like her? What if I'm using her as a replacement instead of seeing her as her own person? Are you? His mother's question was pointed. When you're with Vivian, are you thinking about Sarah or are you thinking about Vivian? Ethan considered this honestly. When had he stopped comparing them? When had Vivian become just Vivian instead of Clara's sister? It had been weeks ago, he realized. Somewhere between the planetarium and the school play, Vivian had become her own person in his mind. He noticed things about her that had nothing to do with Clara, the way she listened intently when people spoke, her dry sense of humor, the vulnerability she showed when she talked about her loneliness. I think about Vivian, he admitted, as herself, not as Sarah's replacement. Then maybe you have your answer. But Mom, what if it ruins everything? Well, what if we try something and it doesn't work out and then Lucas loses his aunt? What if it does work out? What if you both find something real? His mother's voice was gentle. You can't live your whole life afraid of what might go wrong, honey. Sometimes you have to take a risk. After they hung up, Ethan sat in the dark and thought about risk. He'd been playing it safe for 3 years, focusing only on Lucas, never looking ahead to a future that included more than just survival. But maybe it was time to be brave. Maybe it was time to want something for himself. The following Saturday, Vivian arrived to find Ethan acting strange. He was jumpy, distracted, kept starting sentences and not finishing them. Lucas noticed immediately. Are you okay, Daddy? You're being weird. I'm fine, buddy, just thinking about some stuff. Vivian and Lucas went to the park while Ethan stayed home, claiming he needed to catch up on chores. Really, he needed time to build up his courage for what he was planning to do. When they returned, Lucas was full of stories about the playground and how Vivian had pushed him on the swings for 20 minutes straight. Ethan made dinner while they talked, trying to act normal and mostly failing. After Lucas was in bed, Vivian lingered in the doorway like she had every week. But this time, Ethan didn't let her leave. Can we talk? His heart was pounding. About something that's not Lucas? Vivian's expression shifted from surprise to wariness. Of course. They sat on the couch, the same place they'd sat dozens of times before, but everything felt different now, charged with possibility and danger. I've been thinking about what you said a few weeks ago, about both of us being stuck. Ethan forced himself to meet her eyes. You were right. I've been using grief as an excuse not to move forward. Ethan, I shouldn't have said that. It was overstepping. No, I needed to hear it. Because the truth is, I am lonely. I do miss having someone. And lately I've been thinking... He stopped, the words catching in his throat. Vivian's hand found his, her touch gentle. What have you been thinking? That maybe I've been developing feelings for you. The confession came out barely above a whisper. And I don't know if that's real, or if I'm just desperate for connection, or if I'm projecting Clara onto you because you look like her. But I think about you when you're not here. I look forward to Saturdays more than I should. And tonight, right now, all I want to do is... He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he leaned forward, drawn by something stronger than logic or fear. Vivian met him halfway, her breath catching as the space between them disappeared. Their lips were inches apart when reality crashed down on both of them. They jerked away from each other simultaneously, Ethan standing so fast he nearly knocked over the coffee table. Vivian pressing her hands to her face in horror. Oh God, she whispered. What are we doing? I don't know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have. No, I wanted... She cut herself off, looking stricken. This is wrong. This is so wrong. It's Clara. Ethan's voice was hollow. She's between us. She's always going to be between us. She's my sister, my dead sister. And you're her husband, her widower. Vivian was shaking. How could we even think about... I know, it's wrong. But even as Ethan said it, part of him wanted to reach for her again, to finish what they'd started, which made it even worse. Vivian grabbed her purse, her movements jerky with panic. I need to go. I need to think. I can't be here right now. Vivian, wait. I'll call you. About next Saturday. Or maybe I shouldn't come next Saturday. Maybe we need space. She was backing toward the door, her eyes wild. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. She was gone before Ethan could respond, the door closing with a quiet click that sounded like an ending. Ethan sank onto the couch and put his head in his hands. What had he done? He'd destroyed the one good thing Lucas had found since Sarah died, ruined the fragile family they'd been building, all because he couldn't control himself for 5 more seconds. His phone stayed silent all night, all the next day. By Monday, Ethan was convinced he'd never hear from Vivian again, that she'd cut them off completely to escape the uncomfortable situation he'd created. Then Tuesday afternoon, his phone rang. I can't stop thinking about it, Vivian said without preamble. About almost kissing you. About how much I wanted to. Me too, Ethan admitted. This is impossible, right? We can't do this. It's too complicated, too wrong. Yeah, but I can't stop thinking about you. Her voice cracked. God, what kind of person does that make me? Wanting my dead sister's husband? The same kind of person I am, apparently. They sat in silence on the phone, both thinking the same thing neither wanted to say. I'm not coming this Saturday, Vivian finally said, or next Saturday. I need time to sort out my feelings, to figure out what's real and what's just grief and loneliness. Okay? The disappointment was crushing. What about Lucas? Tell him I'm traveling for work, that I'll call him when I can. Her voice wavered. I'm not abandoning him, Ethan. I just need space from you, from this situation. I understand. Do you? Because I'm not sure I do. I'm not sure I understand anything anymore. She took a shaky breath. I spent 13 years missing Clara, grieving her, and now I find out she had this whole life, this family, and I'm falling for the man she loved. How is that even happening? I don't know. Ethan's own voice was rough. But I know I can't stop it. We have to stop it. For Lucas, for Claire's memory, for our own sanity. You're right. So we agree. We take a break. We figure ourselves out. And then maybe, eventually, we can go back to just being family. Just being family, Ethan repeated, the words tasting like ash. After they hung up, Ethan sat in his empty apartment and wondered how he'd managed to fall for the one person in the world who was completely off limits. Clara's sister, Lucas's aunt. The woman who looked at him with Clara's eyes but was entirely, devastatingly herself. He'd promised to move on, to find happiness again. But he'd never imagined it would be this complicated, this painful, this impossible. The weeks that followed felt like moving through fog. Ethan went through the motions, work, daycare pickup, dinner, bedtime, but everything had a hollow quality, like he was watching his own life from a distance. Lucas kept asking about Aunt Vivian, accepting the work travel excuse at first, but growing more skeptical as the days stretched into weeks. When is she coming back? Lucas asked for the 10th time, pushing his chicken nuggets around his plate. I don't know, buddy. Her work trip is taking longer than expected. Can we call her? I want to tell her about my spelling test. I got 100%. That's great, Lucas. I'm really proud of you. Ethan avoided the question about calling. Vivian had sent a few texts checking on Lucas, but their communication had been stilted, careful, nothing like the easy friendship they'd developed. You're sad, Lucas observed with the blunt honesty of children. You've been sad since Aunt Vivian left. I'm not sad, just tired from work. You're sad the same way you were sad after Mommy died. You smile, but your eyes don't smile. The observation cut deeper than it should have. Ethan set down his fork. Sometimes grown-ups have complicated feelings, buddy. But I promise I'm okay. And I promise Aunt Vivian will come back when she can. Do you promise? Or just regular promise? Promise. But Ethan wasn't sure he believed it himself. 3 weeks had passed since that almost kiss, and the silence between them had grown heavier with each passing day. He'd started drafting texts to her a dozen times, always deleting them before hitting send. What was there to say? That he missed her? That he couldn't stop thinking about her? That the guilt was eating him alive, but the wanting wouldn't go away? On a Thursday evening, 4 weeks after their last conversation, Ethan's phone rang with Vivian's number. His heart jumped into his throat as he answered. Hi. Hi. Her voice sounded tired. How's Lucas? Missing you? He got 100% on his spelling test. That's wonderful. Tell him I'm proud of him. A pause. How are you? Surviving? You? Same. Another pause, longer this time. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to sort through everything. That's good. That's really good. She asked me something interesting. She asked if I was attracted to you because you loved Clara, or if I was attracted to you despite the connection to Clara. Vivian's voice was careful, measured. I've been thinking about that question a lot. And? Ethan's mouth was dry. And I think it's both. I think part of me is drawn to you because you represent Clara's happiness, this life she built that I never got to be part of. But I'm also drawn to you because you're kind and patient and you're an incredible father. Because you make me laugh. Because when I'm with you, I feel less alone. Ethan closed his eyes. Lucas's voice from the other room, a reminder of all the reasons this conversation was dangerous. Vivian, I know all the reasons this is impossible. Believe me, I've listed them to my therapist every week, but I can't make the feelings go away just because they're inconvenient. What do we do? I don't know. But I miss Lucas, and I miss you, and I hate that I'm missing his childhood because I'm too much of a coward to face this situation. You're not a coward. You're being smart, protecting everyone. Am I? Or am I running away just like Clara did, except from different things? Vivian's voice cracked. My therapist said something else. She said that sometimes the right thing and the easy thing aren't the same, and that avoiding pain doesn't make it go away. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to try, not jumping into anything, not rushing, but just being honest about what we're feeling. Seeing if there's something real here or if it's just grief and loneliness making us grasp at each other. Every logical part of Ethan's brain screamed that this was a terrible idea, but his heart, the part he'd been trying to ignore for weeks, surged with hope. What about Lucas? What do we tell him? The truth. Age appropriate, but the truth. That we care about each other, and we're trying to figure out what that means. Vivian's voice strengthened. And if it doesn't work out, we handle it like adults. We don't let it affect his relationship with me. We put him first, always. Always? Ethan agreed. Can I come over this Saturday? Like before? Yeah, Lucas will be thrilled. And you? The question was tentative, hopeful. Yeah, Ethan said quietly. Me too. Saturday morning, Lucas woke up buzzing with excitement. Is Aunt Vivian really coming? You're sure? I'm sure. She'll be here at 2. Can we make her lunch to show we missed her? They spent the morning attempting to make sandwiches that looked presentable, Lucas carefully arranging chips on plates and pouring juice into their nicest glasses. Ethan watched his son fuss over details and felt his chest tighten with love and fear in equal measure. Whatever happened with Vivian, Lucas's well-being had to come first. When the doorbell rang at 2 o'clock sharp, Lucas raced to answer it. Vivian stood in the hallway holding a small wrapped box, looking nervous in a way Ethan had never seen her. She'd dressed simply, jeans and a sweater, but she'd clearly taken care with her appearance. I missed you so much, Lucas said, throwing his arms around her waist. I missed you too, sweetheart. Vivian hugged him back, her eyes finding Ethan's over Lucas's head. The look that passed between them was electric, full of everything they hadn't said. They had lunch at the small table, Lucas monopolizing the conversation with everything Vivian had missed. His spelling test, a field trip to the fire station, a new friend named Marcus who collected rocks. Vivian listened with complete attention, asking questions and laughing in all the right places, but Ethan could feel the tension humming beneath the surface. After lunch, Lucas wanted to show Vivian a Lego spaceship he'd built. While they worked on adding modifications in the living room, Ethan cleaned up the kitchen and tried to calm his racing heart. This was happening. They were really going to try this. Around 4, Lucas started yawning. The excitement of Vivian's return combined with his active morning had worn him out. Why don't you rest for a bit, buddy? Ethan suggested. You can watch a movie in your room. But Aunt Vivian just got here. I'll still be here when you wake up, Vivian promised. I'm not going anywhere. Once Lucas was settled with the movie, Ethan and Vivian finally had the conversation they'd been avoiding. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, a careful distance between them, both afraid to get too close. I've been thinking about what you said, Ethan started, about trying, and I want to, but I'm terrified. Me too. Vivian's hands twisted in her lap. Terrified of messing this up, of hurting Lucas, of disrespecting Clara's memory. My mom said something that's been stuck in my head. She asked if I thought Sarah would be upset about us. What did you say? I said I didn't know. But then I went back and read Clara's letter again, really read it, and she was explicit. She wanted me to move on. She wanted me to find someone new. But did she mean her sister? Vivian's voice was pained. That feels like a stretch. Maybe. Or maybe she knew you better than anyone. Maybe she knew that if anyone could understand what it means to love her and lose her, it would be you. Ethan shifted slightly closer. We're not replacing her, Vivian. We're both carrying her with us. Maybe that's exactly why this could work. Or maybe that's exactly why it won't. How do we build something new when we're both drowning in grief for the same person? I don't know, but I know I haven't felt this alive in 3 years. And I know that when you're not here, everything feels dimmer. Ethan took a breath. I know it's complicated and messy and possibly a disaster waiting to happen, but I also know I want to try. Vivian was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. I'm so scared of losing you both. If we try this and it fails, I lose Lucas too. And I can't survive losing another person I love. Then we don't fail. We communicate, we're honest, we put Lucas first, and we don't fail. Ethan reached across the space between them, offering his hand. We take it slow. We're careful. And we don't make promises we can't keep. Vivian stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment before taking it. The contact sent electricity up Ethan's arm, a feeling he'd almost forgotten existed. Slow, she agreed. Careful. Lucas first. Always Lucas first. They sat holding hands like teenagers, neither sure what came next. Finally, Vivian spoke. Can I tell you something I've never told anyone? Anything. When Clara disappeared, I was angry with her. Furious, actually. She left me alone to deal with Father, to run the company, to manage everything. And part of me hated her for it, even while I was terrified something terrible had happened to her. Vivian's voice shook. When I found out she'd died, my first feeling was relief. Relief that I finally had an answer, that the wondering was over. And I've carried that guilt ever since. What kind of person feels relieved that their sister is dead? The kind who spent 13 years in limbo, not knowing if she was alive or suffering or happy somewhere without you. Ethan squeezed her hand. Grief isn't logical, Vivian. Neither is relief. I've spent so much of my life trying to be perfect. The perfect daughter, the perfect CEO, the perfect heart. And with you and Lucas, I just want to be myself, flawed and messy and figuring it out as I go. That's all we are, flawed and messy. Ethan managed to smile. We're kind of perfect for each other that way. The movie in Lucas's room ended and they heard him stirring. They pulled apart quickly, the spell broken but not forgotten. Lucas emerged, rubbing his eyes. Are you guys being weird again? Ethan and Vivian exchanged glances, and something passed between them. A decision, an agreement, a leap of faith. Buddy, can we talk to you about something? Ethan pulled Lucas onto his lap. Something kind of grown up? Lucas's eyes went wide. Am I in trouble? No, nothing like that. But Aunt Vivian and I need to tell you something, and we need you to be honest about how you feel about it. Vivian moved closer, her hand finding Lucas's small one. You know how your daddy and I have been spending a lot of time together? Because you're my aunt, and daddy is my daddy. Right. But we've also become friends, good friends. And sometimes when grown-ups are good friends, they start to have special feelings for each other. Lucas looked between them, his 6-year-old brain working to understand. Like boyfriend-girlfriend feelings? Maybe. We're not sure yet. But we wanted you to know that we're going to try to figure it out together. Ethan kept his voice gentle. How do you feel about that? Is Aunt Vivian going to be my new mommy? No, Vivian said firmly. Your mommy was special and irreplaceable. No one will ever be your mommy except her. But I could be someone else in your life. Someone who cares about you and your daddy very much. Lucas thought about this seriously. Would you still be my aunt? Always. That won't change no matter what. And you won't go away again? On long work trips? Not if I can help it. Vivian's voice caught. I missed you too much. Okay then. Lucas seemed satisfied with this explanation. Can we have pancakes for dinner? Just like that, the moment of tension passed. Children had a way of accepting the complicated and moving on to the immediate, and right now the immediate concern was pancakes. They made dinner together, the three of them crowded into the small kitchen, flour everywhere, and Lucas more hindrance than help. But there was laughter, real laughter, and for the first time in weeks, Ethan felt like he could breathe. After Lucas was in bed, Vivian reading him 2 chapters from the astronomy book, they returned to the couch, sitting closer than before but still careful. That went better than I expected, Vivian said. Kids are adaptable. It's adults who make things complicated. Speaking of complicated, Vivian turned to face him. What now? Do we date? Do we just keep doing what we've been doing? What does slow and careful actually look like? I think it looks like this. Saturday visits, family dinners, getting to know each other without the panic of almost kissing hanging over us. Ethan smiled. We're already doing most of it. We just acknowledge that there's something more building. And when do we tell people? Your family, my friends? When we're ready? When we're sure this is real and not just 2 lonely people grasping at comfort. Vivian nodded slowly. My therapist said something else. She said the best relationships are built on friendship first. That rushing to romance often means skipping the foundation. Then we build the foundation. We take our time. Ethan reached for her hand again, the gesture already becoming familiar. No pressure, no expectations, just us figuring it out. Just us figuring it out, Vivian repeated, and for the first time since that almost kiss, she smiled without the shadow of guilt behind it. The following weeks fell into a new rhythm. Vivian came over twice a week now, Saturdays and Wednesdays after work. They cooked dinner together, helped Lucas with homework, watched movies on the couch with Lucas between them. To an outside observer, they might have looked like a family, but they moved carefully around the undefined space between friendship and something more. Ethan found himself looking forward to Vivian's visits with an intensity that both thrilled and terrified him. He noticed small things about her, how she hummed while cooking, the way she unconsciously touched her necklace when nervous, the particular shade of gold her eyes turned in lamplight. These were Vivian's details, not Clara's, and he cataloged them carefully. One evening, about 6 weeks into their new arrangement, Vivian arrived with news. I've been thinking about something Lucas said, about wishing he had a sibling. Ethan looked up from the vegetables he was chopping. Okay? Obviously I can't give him that, but I could give him cousins. She rushed on before Ethan could respond. The Hart estate includes a summer house on Martha's Vineyard. It's been sitting empty since my parents died. I was thinking of opening it up, maybe hosting a family reunion of sorts. What family? I thought you and Clara were it. We have cousins. Second cousins, actually. Father kept them at arm's length because they weren't direct line Harts. But they exist. There are kids Lucas's age, teenagers, young adults, a whole branch of the family that got frozen out because of Father's pride. And you want to reconnect with them? I want Lucas to have family beyond just us. I want him to know he comes from somewhere, that he has roots and connections. Vivian set down her purse. And selfishly, I want to stop being alone in that big house. I want noise and chaos and people who don't expect me to be perfect all the time. Ethan considered this. What do you know about these cousins? Not much, but I've been doing research, making calls. Most of them are good people who got cut off through no fault of their own. They deserve to be part of the family again. And if they judge Lucas, if they judge you for wanting a relationship with your sister's widower, then they're not the kind of people I want in our lives anyway. Vivian's voice was firm. But I don't think they will. From what I've learned, most of them hated my father. They'll probably be thrilled that I'm finally breaking free of his controlling legacy. The word "our" hadn't escaped Ethan's notice. our lives. Somewhere along the way, their lives had become intertwined, a plural instead of singular. When were you thinking of doing this reunion? Next month. Give everyone time to arrange travel. It would be a long weekend, Friday to Monday. She hesitated. I'd want you and Lucas there. Both of you, if you're comfortable with that. As what? Lucas's father and your friend? As my family, Vivian said simply. However we want to define that. Ethan set down his knife and turned to face her fully. You know people are going to talk. They're going to assume things, make judgments. Let them. I've spent my whole life caring what people think. I'm done with that. She moved closer, her eyes intense. I care what you think. What Lucas thinks. The rest is noise. Something shifted in that moment. Ethan reached out and cupped her face, his thumb brushing her cheekbone. She leaned into the touch, her eyes closing. I think about kissing you all the time, he admitted quietly. But I keep stopping myself because I'm not sure we're ready. When will we be ready? Vivian's eyes opened, searching his face. We've been building this foundation for weeks. At some point, we have to trust it's solid enough to support more. Are you saying you want me to kiss you? I'm saying I'm tired of waiting for permission that might never come. From ourselves, from Clara's ghost, from the universe. She moved even closer until they were breathing the same air. I'm saying that if we're going to do this, we need to actually do it. This time, when Ethan leaned in, neither of them pulled away. The kiss was tentative at first, both of them half expecting guilt or wrongness to crash down on them. But there was only rightness, the soft press of lips, the gentle exploration, the feeling of pieces clicking into place. When they finally broke apart, Vivian was crying again, but she was smiling too. No guilt? She whispered. No guilt, Ethan confirmed, surprised to find it true. Just rightness. Just rightness, she agreed and kissed him again. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't hear Lucas's bedroom door open, didn't notice him padding out to the living room until his voice broke the spell. Are you guys kissing? They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Lucas stood in his pajamas, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, looking more curious than upset. We are, Ethan admitted, because lying seemed worse than the truth. Is that okay with you? Lucas considered this with the seriousness of a judge. Does this mean Aunt Vivian is your girlfriend now? Maybe, if that's okay with you. Will she be here more often? Probably yes. And she'll still read me stories and help with homework? Of course, Vivian said, her voice thick with emotion. Then it's okay with me. Lucas climbed onto the couch between them, settling in like he belonged there. Can we watch a movie? The dinosaur one? Just like that, the moment was diffused. They queued up the movie, Lucas between them, and somewhere during the opening credits, Lucas fell asleep. Ethan and Vivian sat in the flickering light, hands linked behind Lucas's sleeping form, and everything felt possible. The month leading up to the family reunion passed in a blur of planning and nervous anticipation. Vivian threw herself into organizing, determined to do right by the relatives her father had shut out. Ethan helped where he could, mostly by keeping Lucas occupied while Vivian made endless phone calls and arrangements. Their relationship deepened naturally, kisses becoming more frequent but never rushed, conversations stretching late into the night after Lucas was asleep. They talked about everything, their fears, their hopes, their grief for Clara that would never fully disappear but was learning to coexist with new joy. One night, 2 weeks before the reunion, Vivian brought up the safe deposit box. Have you thought about when you'll give Lucas the materials Clara left for him? Not until he's older, 12 at least, maybe later. Ethan had thought about this a lot. He's too young to understand the complexity of what she did. Can I ask what's in it, or is that too personal? I don't know. I haven't opened it yet. At Vivian's surprised look, he shrugged. I've been too afraid. Whatever's in there, it's Clara's final words about her family, about why she left. What if it changes how I see everything? Would that be so terrible? Having a fuller picture? I guess not. Ethan ran his hands through his hair. Do you want to go with me? To Seattle to open the box? Are you sure? That feels like something deeply personal. You're part of this now. Part of us. And whatever's in that box, it's your family history too. He reached for her hand. Plus, I don't want to do it alone. They flew to Seattle the following weekend, Lucas staying with Ethan's parents. The trip felt significant, like they were crossing a threshold together. At the bank, a clerk led them to a small private room and brought the safe deposit box. It was larger than Ethan expected, heavy with whatever secrets it contained. Do you want me to wait outside? Vivian asked. No, stay. Ethan took a breath and opened the box. Inside were several items, a thick manila envelope, a smaller sealed letter addressed to Lucas, a USB drive, and a jewelry box. Ethan opened the jewelry box first, finding a necklace he recognized. Clara had worn it in some of the childhood photos Vivian had shown him. This was hers, Vivian said softly, touching the delicate chain. Mother gave it to her for her 16th birthday. I thought she'd thrown it away when she left. She kept pieces of her old life, pieces of you. Ethan handed her the necklace. Maybe you should have it until Lucas is old enough. Vivian clutched it to her chest, overcome. They moved on to the manila envelope, which contained newspaper clippings, legal documents, and what appeared to be a journal Clara had kept during her first year away from the Hart family. The journal entries were raw, painful to read. Clara had been terrified those first months, constantly looking over her shoulder, afraid of being found. But there was also joy in the entries, the freedom of choosing her own clothes, her own food, her own schedule, the simple pleasure of being nobody. The USB drive contained videos, dozens of them, time-stamped from before Lucas was born through a week before Clara's death. Ethan's hands shook as he plugged it into his laptop. The first video showed Clara, looking younger than Ethan remembered, sitting in their old apartment. "Hi, baby," she said to the camera, and Ethan realized she was talking to Lucas, to a future version of their son. "You're not born yet, but you will be in about 6 months. And someday when you're old enough to understand, your daddy is going to show you this." They watched video after video, Clara talking to the son who would grow up without her. She told him about her family, about why she'd left, about meeting Ethan and falling in love. She was honest about her lies, but also honest about her happiness. In the final video, recorded a week before her death, Clara looked tired but content. "I hope you never have to watch these videos, Lucas. I hope I'm there to tell you all of this in person. But if you're watching this, it means something happened to me." She smiled sadly. "I want you to know that every choice I made, leaving my family, creating a new identity, lying about who I was, I made because I wanted to be free. And I was free, baby. With you and your daddy, I was free." She paused, seeming to gather her thoughts. "I also want you to know about Vivian, your aunt. She tried to protect me when we were kids, and I repaid her by disappearing without a word. If she's found you, if she's in your life, please don't shut her out. She deserves to be loved, to have family. And you deserve to know the part of me that came from her." Clara leaned closer to the camera. "One more thing. If your daddy hasn't found someone new, tell him I said to stop being stubborn. Tell him that being alone isn't noble, it's just lonely. And tell him I want him to be happy more than I want him to be faithful to my memory." The video ended. Ethan and Vivian sat in silence, both crying. "She knew," Vivian finally said. "Somehow she knew this might happen. Or she just knew us, knew that we'd both be stubborn and guilty and too afraid to reach for happiness." Ethan closed the laptop carefully. "She gave us permission, both of us. Does that make it easier or harder?" "Easier, I think, because now it's not just about what we want. It's about honoring what she wanted for us." They spent the rest of the day in Seattle, walking through Pike Place Market and along the waterfront, talking through everything they'd learned. By the time they flew home that evening, something had settled between them. A peace, an acceptance, a sense of moving forward with Clara's blessing rather than against her memory. The family reunion arrived with perfect late summer weather. Martha's vineyard was beautiful, the Hart summer house even more impressive than Vivian's mansion. Extended family arrived throughout Friday afternoon, cousins and second cousins and their children, people Vivian barely knew but was determined to connect with. Lucas was in heaven, suddenly surrounded by kids of various ages who were all excited to meet him. He raced around the property with a pack of children, their laughter carrying through the open windows. Ethan watched from the porch, Vivian beside him, her hand in his. They decided to be open about their relationship this weekend, to let people draw their own conclusions. "You did good," Ethan said, gesturing to the chaos of happy family members. "This is exactly what Lucas needed. It's what I needed too." Vivian leaned against him. "I spent so many years alone in that company, in that role. I forgot what it felt like to just be part of something bigger." That evening, after dinner, Vivian stood up and clinked her glass for attention. The room quieted, all eyes turning to her. "I want to thank you all for coming. I know many of you have complicated feelings about the Hart family, and you have every right to those feelings. My father was controlling and often cruel, especially to those he considered beneath him." She paused, her voice steady. "But I'm not my father, and I don't want to continue his legacy of isolation and control. I want to build something new, a family that actually feels like family." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Vivian continued, "I also want to introduce you to someone very special, my nephew, Lucas Cole." She gestured to where Lucas sat with the other kids. "Lucas is the son of my sister Clara, who many of you remember. Clara passed away 3 years ago, but she left behind this amazing little boy who deserves to know his family." More murmurs, these tinged with sympathy and curiosity. Lucas waved shyly from his seat. "And this is Ethan Cole, Lucas's father." Vivian's eyes found Ethan's across the room. "He's also someone who's become very important to me personally. We're figuring out what that means, but we wanted you all to know that we're building a life together, a family together." The room erupted in applause, some more enthusiastic than others, but mostly supportive. One of the cousins, a woman in her 40s named Margaret, raised her glass. "To new beginnings and chosen family," she toasted. "And to finally having a heart who understands that people matter more than power." They drank to that, and the evening continued with music and dancing and the kind of chaos that only happens when 3 generations of family gather under one roof. Ethan watched it all with a sense of wonder, thinking about how far they'd come from that first day when he'd stumbled into Vivian's mansion and seen Clara's portrait. Later that night, after Lucas was asleep upstairs with the other kids, Ethan and Vivian walked down to the beach. The moon was full, casting silver light across the water. "Thank you for being brave enough to do this," Ethan said. "The reunion, us, all of it. Thank you for giving me a chance, for not letting me run away when I got scared." Vivian stopped walking, turning to face him. "I love you. I know we said we'd take it slow, but I love you. And I love Lucas. And I need you to know that. I love you too." The words felt natural, right? And I think Clara would be happy, really happy. "You think so?" "I know so. Because she wanted both of us to build real lives, to find real love. And somehow we found it with each other." Ethan pulled Vivian close. "She brought us together, in a way. One last gift." They stood on the beach holding each other, the waves gentle against the shore, and everything felt complete. Not perfect. There would always be complicated moments, questions from Lucas as he got older, grief that surfaced unexpectedly, but complete in the way that mattered. The next morning, Ethan woke early and walked down to the beach alone. He needed to do something he'd been putting off, something that felt necessary before fully moving forward. He found a quiet spot and pulled out his phone, opening the photos of Clara. There were hundreds of them. Their wedding day, Lucas's birth, random snapshots of their life together. He looked through them all, really looked, letting himself remember and grieve and be grateful. "I hope you can see this," he said quietly to the waves, to the sky, to wherever Clara might be. "I hope you know that Lucas is okay. More than okay. He's thriving. And I think you'd like what Vivian and I are building. She's good for him. Good for both of us." He paused, feeling foolish talking to empty air, but needing to say it anyway. "I'm going to tell him the truth when he's ready. About who you really were, about the family you came from, about why you made the choices you made. But I'm also going to make sure he knows how much you loved him. How much you loved us both." Ethan's voice cracked. "Thank you for Lucas. Thank you for the 7 years. And thank you for Vivian, even if you didn't mean it that way." He sat there as the sun rose, feeling a weight lift that he'd been carrying for 3 years. Not the grief. That would always be there, a part of him. But the guilt. The sense that moving forward meant betraying the past. Clara had given him permission to be happy. It was time to accept that gift. When he returned to the house, Lucas was up and eating breakfast with a group of kids his age. Vivian was in the kitchen making coffee, her hair still messy from sleep. She smiled when she saw him, and Ethan's heart did that flip. It always did now when she looked at him like that. "Good walk?" she asked. "Yeah, I needed to say goodbye." At her questioning look, he explained, "To Clara. Not forever, but to the version of grief that was keeping me stuck. I'll always miss her, always love what we had, but I'm ready to love what we have too." Vivian set down her coffee and kissed him, soft and sweet. "I'm ready too." Lucas wandered into the kitchen, followed by 2 kids his age. "Daddy, Aunt Vivian, can we go swimming later, please?" "Sure, buddy." "And Marcus asked if you're getting married. Are you?" Ethan and Vivian exchanged glances, both trying not to laugh at the blunt question. "We haven't talked about that yet," Vivian said. "Would it bother you if we did?" "No, but if you get married, does that mean we'd move to the big house?" Lucas looked torn between excitement and concern. "Because I like our apartment. It's small, but it's home." "We'd figure it out together," Ethan promised. "All 3 of us. Because we're a family now, and families make big decisions together." "Okay, can I have more pancakes?" Crisis averted, Lucas returned to his breakfast. Ethan and Vivian stood in the kitchen, hands linked, watching the chaos of their extended family fill the house with noise and life. "So," Vivian said quietly, "marriage. Is that something you'd want? Eventually?" "Eventually, yeah. When the time is right." Ethan squeezed her hand. "You?" "Eventually sounds perfect." They didn't need to rush. They had time now, time to build, time to grow, time to create something that honored the past while embracing the future. Claire had given them all that, with her careful planning, her hidden accounts, her videos for Lucas. She'd given them each other. That afternoon, as promised, they all went swimming. Lucas splashed in the waves with his newfound cousins while Ethan and Vivian watched from the shore, their feet in the water. "Daddy! Aunt Vivian! Watch this!" Lucas called, preparing to jump a wave. They watched together, applauding his successful jump, and Ethan felt a sense of peace he'd thought he'd never find again. His son was happy, surrounded by family. The woman he loved stood beside him, no longer afraid of what they were building. And somewhere, he hoped, Clara was at peace too, knowing her son would grow up loved and supported and free to be whoever he wanted to be. "Why doesn't Aunt Vivian come anymore?" Lucas had asked weeks ago when Vivian had been avoiding them. The question had been innocent but devastating, proof that her absence left a hole. Now Lucas never had to ask that question. Because Vivian was here, would continue to be here, woven into the fabric of their daily lives in ways that felt natural and right. As the sun set over the vineyard, casting the world in shades of gold and pink, the extended family gathered on the beach for a bonfire. Someone produced marshmallows and graham crackers. Kids ran in circles while adults talked and laughed. Margaret, the cousin who'd toasted earlier, settled next to Ethan. "You're good for her," she said, nodding toward Vivian, who was helping Lucas roast a marshmallow. "I haven't seen her this relaxed since before Jonathan died. Maybe ever." "She's good for us too, for Lucas and me. Clara would approve, I think." She always wanted Vivian to break free of the family expectations, to find something real. Margaret smiled. Looks like she finally did. Ethan watched Vivian laugh at something Lucas said, her face illuminated by firelight, and thought about the impossible journey that had brought them here. A portrait in a mansion, a DNA test, hidden millions and secret identities, grief and guilt and the slow, careful building of something new. It shouldn't have worked. By all rights, this relationship should have been a disaster, too complicated, too fraught with ghosts and impossible expectations. But somehow, it had become the most natural thing in the world. Two people who'd loved the same woman finding a way to love each other, not despite that shared history, but because of it. Lucas came running over, marshmallow sticky hands reaching for Ethan. "Daddy, we're going to tell ghost stories. Will you come? Wouldn't miss it. And Aunt Vivian? I'm coming too, Vivian said, joining them. She looked at Ethan over Lucas's head, her expression soft with love and hope. We're all coming. They walked back to the bonfire together, Lucas between them holding both their hands, and Ethan thought about Clara's final video, about her wish for him to find happiness, for Vivian to have family, for Lucas to know where he came from. She'd given them all of that. One last gift from a woman who'd spent her life running from family only to create something beautiful in her absence. As they sat around the fire, Lucas leaning against Vivian's shoulder and Ethan's arm around both of them, he silently thanked Clara for everything she'd given them. The obvious gifts, Lucas, the financial security, the introduction to Vivian, but also the harder gifts, the lesson that love wasn't about perfection, but about showing up. The understanding that family could be chosen as well as born, the permission to move forward without forgetting the past. The ghost stories started, kids shrieking with delighted fear, while adults laughed and added details. Stars began to emerge overhead. The same constellations Clara had shown Lucas, the same sky that connected their past to their present. And there, on a beach in Martha's Vineyard, surrounded by family both old and new, Ethan Cole finally understood what Clara had known all along. That freedom wasn't about running away. It was about choosing, every day, to build a life worth living. To love honestly, parent fully, and let yourself be loved in return. She'd done that. And now, with Vivian by his side and Lucas in his arms, Ethan was doing it too. Not replacing what he'd lost, but honoring it by creating something new, something real, something free, something that felt, at last, like coming home.